welcome to this course in getting out of transference, what's called transference in human design. Now, what is transference? I've done videos about it. A lot of people know what transference is, some people don't. What transference is it concerns the design Sun-Earth placements and the design nodes, and the personality Sun-Earth placements and the personality nodes. So those four placements. People might be familiar with variable, like when you go to Jovian and get your chart done, you see those four arrows around the head. That's connected to these four areas, whether they have a right or left fixing tone underneath within the substructure of those lines. Now, from the top down, you have the line of the hexagram, then beneath that you have the color, then you have the tone, and then you have the base. But what we're going to be talking about is tone and color. Now, each hexagram has 6 lines, but within each line you have 6 colors, and within each color you have 6 tones, and within each tone you have 5 bases. But like I said, we're just going to be focusing on tone and color. As you can see, what I have written about tone is that tone is 2 steps below the line and fixes the color above it into either a left, active, or right, passive cognition. Tone is very fixed and is not affected by conditioning. That's the fascinating thing about tone. You could say tone is perfect and base is perfect. It's not affected by the conditioning of the outer world, or the the world of the Maya, being the illusion of our separateness. But when we get to color, which is 1 step below the line and 1 step above the tone, color is a fascinating thing. Lower colors concern the dense what, whereas upper colors concern the more environmental how. Color, which is 1 step below the line, is magical in that it is the bridge between the untouchable perfection of tone and base and the world of contact with and conditioning by the other on the level of line and body graph. Since color is so close to the surface, or the Maya, it can be affected by a kind of harmonic conditioning called transference. It's not all the way within the world of conditioning, and it's not all the way within the, you could say, untouchable aspect of tone. It's kind of like a balance between them. And the key word for color, I found, is appreciation. And appreciation is going to be the main tool for getting out of transference if you are in it. Now, what is transference? In this course, we're mostly going to be looking at the determination, which is the design Sun-Earth substructures, and the environment, which is the design nodes substructures. These are some of the most powerful forms of transference that people can get stuck in. We could look a little bit later at the transference that's possible with the personality Sun-Earth and the personality nodes, but since transference is so powerful with the design Sun-Earth and the design nodes, that's really where I'm going to be focusing, because it can be the most intense transference a person can get stuck in. Now, what is transference? I've talked a little bit about it. A way of understanding it is in the same way you would understand the line of the hexagram, in a way. Even though transference doesn't really exist with the hexagram itself, it's helpful in understanding the nature of color by looking at the hexagram. The hexagram is like colors, like how there's lower colors and upper colors. With the hexagram, there's a lower trigram and there's upper trigram. Now, the lower trigram is related to the upper trigram in a fascinating way, where the 1 and the 4, the 1 and the 4 have something in common. They're different, but they have a lot in common. And the same thing goes for the 2 and the 5, and the 3 and the 6. And you could say the lower is personal, the lower trigram is personal, and the upper trigram is transpersonal. It's sort of like how the lower colors are more dense and concern the what, and the upper colors are more environmental and concern the how. Now, with color, these relationships between the 1 and the 4, the 2 and the 5, and the 3 and the 6 are really fascinating. The relationship between the 1 and the 4 can actually lead to transference. If somebody has a first color, for example, they might get pulled into a fourth color reality because it seems to be in harmony, and there is a kind of pressure within the homogenized field, this kind of pressure that's within the morphic field, to pull someone into a kind of conformity because it seems like there's harmony with what they already have. And you could say this is very much connected to a lack of appreciation for one's own native cognition. I'm going to be using that word, native, like native, your native cognition or your native color. Say someone has a first color. Someone who has a native first color may be getting pulled into fourth color stuff because there seems to be a harmony there. And this kind of transference can be very intense depending on the person. And I don't want to freak people out too much, but transference can be a very intense thing, especially with determination as it concerns cognition, lifestyle, and how we feed on the environment through our cognition, which also touches on diet. And it can be it's so close to a person's cognition and the way they think and experience the world that they might not see it. It's sort of like if you ask a fish what it's like in water, they're like, what water? It's kind of like that with transference. If a person is very deep in it, they might not realize just how deep in it they are, or how much it's blocking appreciation for their cognition. And appreciation is really the name of the game when it comes to us being incarnate beings in this world of contrast and duality. It's all about appreciation. Of course, there's a lot of other things you can say about it, but the deep appreciation of being a differentiated being, right? Of course, there's unity. Of course, there's connectedness between things. Of course, there's compassion. Of course, there's love. All that is really important. Appreciation is a really big deal because it helps you get out of transference progressively. And if somebody is deep in transference and they might not realize it, what I do is I tell them that they need to simply start appreciating their native cognition as much as they can. And they will notice over time, just through being aware of their color, with determination. Something like determination is where I start. It's the most important thing to start with. If they can start appreciating their native color as much as they possibly can and simply understand it and be aware of what it is, they will notice over time. If they're in transference, they'll notice the transference may be getting more heavy feeling in their head. It may feel more heavy as kind of like an ambience around them, and they will notice it more. It's not necessarily something that you can be snapped out of immediately. It's almost like coming to understand through appreciation and through seeing the contrast. And eventually, you get to a place where the appreciation becomes so deep for your native color, it doesn't mean you dislike the other color. Say, for example, between the 1 and the 4, or the 2 and the 5. It doesn't mean a second color. If a second color person is within fifth color transference and then they get out of it over time, it doesn't mean that they have something against fifth color stuff. It doesn't mean they don't like people who have a fifth color determination. They can appreciate it, but they appreciate their native cognition more, and they respect it, and you could say, nourish it. They nourish it as much as they can. And then over time, I've noticed this with myself because I have a second color determination, and I used to be in deep fifth color transference. And it took me a few years to really get out of it. But now I'm at a place where not only do I deeply appreciate my second color, not only is it functioning very, very well, and I fully embody it, but I can also appreciate fifth color stuff. And I can go into that world without getting lost in it. That is the key thing, without getting lost in it. And the same goes for the 3 and the 6, So we have these relationships, these 3 relationships between the lower colors and the upper colors, between the 1 and the 4, the 2 and the 5, and the 3 and the 6. Now first we're going to move through each color in terms of determination and environment, in terms of cognition and lifestyle, and also dietary stuff with the determination, and then environment, what environment your body is most harmonically aligned with. After we move through each of these colors, then we're going to move into transference, what it is, and also how to get out of it. So first, let's look at the first color. The first color is called appetite. It's given the keynote of appetite. In terms of environment, it's called caves. Now, depending on the tone underneath that color, it could be either left or right. It could either be consecutive or alternating. And I'll get more into that in a bit. But I've noticed that people with a first color determination, they can have really the greatest appreciation for things, the what. And determination is often associated with food and dietary regimens, but it's much more than that. It's much more than just how you eat your food. It's connected to cognition, how your brain cognizes. That's a big thing about determination. How your brain prefers to think, how it prefers to feed on the environment. Because sustenance doesn't come in just through food, it comes in through information, it can come in through lifestyle, how you choose to live, the kinds of things you choose to think about or feel most gravitated toward. This is what determination is all about. Cognition, how you choose to think, how you choose to feed on the environment, lifestyle. But it is also connected to food, how you take in that kind of sustenance. And I've noticed that, people with a first color determination, they can have the deepest and strongest appreciation for things unto themselves. Remember that the lower colors concern the dense what, whereas upper colors concern the more environmental how. So if we're looking at the first color, what is it? It's at the base of the lower colors. It's the foundation of the what, you could say. So it forms the foundation of a kind of cognition that is about appreciating things more than appreciating the ambience of the environment or the how. And being that the one is the foundation of that, you can tell when somebody has a first color determination. They really appreciate things unto themselves, depending on what it is. Now, say for example, it's about food and they're enjoying their food. It's about the food itself and the kind of electric feeling they can get just by eating the food. You could say that the first color is the hunter and the second color is the gatherer. That's an interesting way of thinking about it. First color hunter, second color gatherer. What the first color will try to do, you could also think about it in terms of the first line of the hexagram. The first line likes to have a strong foundation. It enjoys feeling secure with that foundation. But with the first color, it has the same kind of thing. It's about security, but in a different kind of way. Depending on if they're in a lot of transference, they might not be experiencing that security or that kind of invigorating feeling when they're deeply appreciating things unto themselves, when they take in things, either one thing at a time, if it's a left fixed, or alternating and mixing things up a little bit, if it's a right fixed first color. And like I said, the first color can have some of the deepest appreciation for food itself, or for things themselves. I've noticed this. Say, for example, when a first color takes food into themselves, it is just a really powerful, beautiful thing for them to, you could say, hunt down what they want and then take it into themselves. It is a huge experience for them to do that, to become one with what they're eating. One, right? And it's a very powerful experience for them. You could say it's very visceral, meaning it's very physical. Their body is very invigorated and connected to what they're about to take into themselves. And then when they do take it into themselves, it is a very deep communion between their own life force, their own being, and the being and the life force of what it is they're taking into themselves. It could be anything. It could be guacamole. It could be some kind of snack. Anything like that. When something is within the sights of the first color, their appetite will be very high. Now remember that the keynote of the first color is appetite. Their appetite is very, you could say, huge for things. And it's what causes them to want to hunt down and get it. That's the thrill, you could say, for the first color. When they want something, they just gotta have it. It's different than the second color, which we'll get to in a minute. The second color is more picky when it comes to just what and when and how it likes things. The first color is more in the moment with what it wants right now in order to satisfy that appetite, to satisfy this very, very large appetite that it can have. And this appetite isn't just for food. This appetite could be for love. This appetite could be for information. This appetite could be for something that it feels that it wants to bring into itself, a new foundational experience, a new way of bringing a foundational experience into its cognition. And that is done through being aware of things unto themselves. Things unto themselves. And this is where the great appreciation for the first color comes from. Now, this is the case for all the colors, appreciation. And it's important to understand how the first color can be the most appreciative. Why appreciation is the name of the game, because it lays the foundation for all the colors that follow it. The foundation of appreciation is so important. And it is so important for a first color to understand the nature of appreciation, of what they're getting into, what they're paying attention to. And if it's a left fixed first color, if they have a first, second, or third tone underneath that first color, then it's consecutive, meaning really one thing at a time. Really one thing at a time. So whether it's food, it's important for them to experiment with mono meals and things unto themselves. I don't go so far as to say that people with a first color should never eat something like guacamole just because it mixes avocados with tomatoes and onion and cilantro with garlic. I think it's okay if they have stuff like that. But what they need to be aware of is the deep appreciation for things unto themselves in the natural world. Say, for example, like having just a spoonful of honey. What that is like for a person with a first color who is really appreciating it. Or just having an avocado. Just an avocado, no salt, no pepper, nothing. Just cutting open an avocado and eating it with a spoon. That can be a very powerful experience for someone with a first color. Especially if it's a left fixed first color. Now this can also go for information. If they're studying something, it's very important for them to take it all the way until it's finished and fulfill that appetite, to really satisfy that appetite. And it has to be done satisfactorily. They have to fully appreciate one thing at a time. And then when they're done with that, they can move on to the next thing. If they're trying to do too many things at once, they could be getting pulled into fourth color transference. They could be trying to live in a fourth color way. And I'll be getting into that later. If they have a right fixed first color, it's alternating, meaning, yes, the first color is about one thing at a time, but if there's a right fixing tone underneath it, they could experience a deep appreciation of one thing, move on to the next thing, and then move back. It's kind of like being able to move back and forth. Because with right fixing tones, you could say it's more communal. It has a lot to do with the presence of other people. Left fixing tones are really focused. They're really individual. It's kind of like having tunnel vision in a way. With right fixing tones, it's more about the environment, other people, what's going on around you. And if you have a first color and a right fixing tone, the nature of your appetite could be stimulated by a lot of different things coming in from the environment. You could be stimulated in this way. You could have an appetite for something like immediately after that comes into your cognition. Because with right fixing tones, it's almost like you don't have much control with rightness. Things just come and go. It's kind of like a 360-degree awareness. But you still have the appreciation of the color. You still want to be able to appreciate things unto themselves whenever you can, wherever possible. But the fact that it is a right fixing tone with a first color, that would mean that kind of appreciation would have a lot to do with the people you're around. How you might share that appreciation with others. Either making food for them, either appreciating information with them, whatever it is. That could be a great source of joy for somebody with a right fixed first color. Being able to alternate their deep appreciation for things depending on what's around them, who's around them, what they're being inspired by in the moment. They might be into a certain kind of information, for example, or like a certain book. But that doesn't mean they have to only focus on just it very intensely until it's all the way done and then move on to the next thing. That would be more of a left fixed first color thing. Making sure you're fully satisfied before moving on to the next thing. With a right fixed first color, they can oscillate, they can alternate a bit more because, like I said, they could be stimulated in a lot of different ways. You know, their cognition can be stimulated in so many different ways concerning what kind of environment they're in, what kind of people they're around, what kind of inspirations they might be getting that might be stimulating their cognition. Now, I'm going to be moving through all the colors here and then getting into transference, how transference works. Now, when we look at environment with the first color, it's called caves. Now, it sort of has the same to do with the first color of determination or even the first line. They have a lot in common. It concerns security, a sense of security and safety. And you could even say appetite, because I've noticed people with caves as an environment, they love being surrounded by their own stuff. They like feeling secure around their own stuff. It just depends, if it's left. If it has a left fixing tone, it's exclusive. If it has a right fixing tone, it's flexible. But if you're a caves person, that just means you want to feel secure in your environment, no matter where that environment is. And it still has the same keynote of appreciation. You want to appreciate the environment that you're in very deeply. People with caves environments, you could think of it like this. Having one way in and one way out of their cave. Or when you're in their cave, so to speak, their room, their special place, they know where everything is. They enjoy having things like lock boxes or safes, or having locks on doors, locks on gates in their backyard. Everything is under lock and key. They may be very protective about who enters their cave and when. If it's left, it's very exclusive. If it's right, it's more flexible about who's coming and who's going because, again, right fixing tones are more communal and have a lot more to do with the environment. Left fixing tones are more personal. Somebody with a left fixed first color environment of caves, you could say they will have a hawk's eye on all their stuff because they feel secure with it. Yes, people with caves, they do feel more comfortable living in basements, underground, a den area, a place like that. But even if they live on the ground floor or maybe on the second floor of a building and they don't have a choice at the moment, it is very important for them to have a space that they can call their own. Because if a first color person is living in, say, they're forced to share a room with someone, right? What they will do is they will try to make an area of that room all their own. They won't just have their stuff kind of scattered here and there where it's like, yeah, it's okay. I just kind of have my stuff. My stuff is over here. We share a closet. No, what a caves person will do is try to cordon off an area of the room. Like you've seen how kids do this who, maybe they share a room when they're younger and they get to a certain age where they're saying, this is my side, that's your side. And they might hang up a sheet or something like this because they really want to have their own space. The thing with a first color environment is that they really need to have their own space. It is so important for them to have their own space with their own stuff because it gives them a great sense of security. People with a first color environment could like really enjoy their cars, for example, because it's like a perfect little bubble. I've often wondered if most truck drivers are people with a caves environment because they have everything. It's their job. They sleep in it. They have all their stuff there. They have all their clothes. And it's just like a really secure place. They have financial security. They have, it's where they sleep. It's kind of like being a turtle in a way. They carry their home on their back. And that's something I really want to look into eventually, like do a kind of a survey or a study and go to like a trucker forum and see how many truckers I can get to give me their birth information and see what percentage of them actually have first color environments. And I would not be surprised if it was many of them, like over 80%. Now, we're going to go ahead and move into the 2. You could think of the 2 as a step above the 1. Not in terms of like it's better. It just means it's getting out of that cognition and into something different. With the 1, you could say that it's dense. It's the most dense, right? It is the foundation of the lower colors, which concern the dense what. So you could say that the 1 is the most dense. The 2 is very interesting because now we have the possibility of space. The possibility of space and the possibility of options and developing taste for things over time. That's why the 2 is called, it has the keynote of taste, but it's also called markets in terms of environment. The way the 2 works is by gathering. In the same way the 1 is like the hunter, it's all about the thing unto itself, gotta have it. The thrill is in the hunt. The thrill is in making it and taking it into oneself and experiencing that deep appreciation of things unto themselves, whatever it might be. With the 2, there's suddenly a very large expansion of space to get picky about what it likes and when it likes it. It's all about the perfect menu of things for a second color. It has a kind of rigidity about it, with the first color being the hunter. The second color is the gatherer. It likes to gather its favorite things, and it enjoys developing a taste for certain things over time and adhering to its taste no matter what. A second color person is very rigid when it comes to what they like and when they like it over time, through their development of taste. Now, this can go for food, but it also goes for lifestyle, the kinds of information they enjoy thinking about or reading about, how they live their life. When they really like something, they want to experience it over and over and over and over again because it's almost like it's brand new every time they experience it. It's so good, it's like the first time every time. It's about familiarity and really appreciating that familiarity over time. Because when you get into the 2, you finally have this opening of space. It's almost like when you step out of the caves, you enter markets in terms of environment, meaning you're stepping out of the cave and now you see that you have all these different kinds of options. All these options of how to live or where you could go or what you could do. But within those options, you have a preference. I like this, I like that, I really like having these, I really like having those, so I'm just going to keep these over here for myself. You could say the two really concerns a deep appreciation of that space, of having a wider variety, of more options that are available to it. The rigidity of the two is fascinating. It's much more rigid than the one, actually, because the two is operating in terms of familiarity, what it likes, when it likes it, and how it likes it, and to go over it and over it because it deeply appreciates that familiarity with things. If you have a left fixing tone underneath the second color, it's called open, meaning they're open to try certain things. They're open to try it and see what it's like. A right fixing tone underneath the second color is called closed, meaning they know if they like something or not just by being somewhere. You know, a right fixed second color might walk into a restaurant and just say, I don't want to be here. I just don't like it. I don't know why I don't like it, but I don't want to be here. They can feel this way about food, too. They could feel that way about information. They could feel that way about people. I just don't like it. I don't know why I don't like it. I just don't like it. But there's an interesting thing about the rigidity of the two. The left and right fixing of the two is an interesting thing. The left fixed second color, which is called open, it's open in order to learn how to be closed at some point. Because you could say that within the first many years of a second color life, maybe up until the Saturn return or maybe a little afterward, they are open to so many things. Yes, they do have a theme of rigidity. They do like the same things all the time. I mean, I have a second color. I know, I could tell you, like, whenever I really like something, I would eat it all the time. Same thing every day. And I'm still like that today. But they are still open to trying new things. Yeah, they have their favorites, but they're still open to trying new things. And they're really open in order to learn how to be closed, because they need to find what is exactly right for them. Because when you look at a left fixing tone, it's more personal, which means it's more seeking. It has a kind of active seeking quality to it. Say, for example, when we're looking at the first color and it has a left fixing tone underneath it, that is really the hunter. Really the hunter. Seeking, finding, getting, right? And the right fixing of the first color, even though it's still the hunter, you could say, there's a more of a communal nature to it. That's why it's alternating with what it likes, that deep appreciation it can have. But with the two, the left fixing of the second color is open because it's always seeking something. It's seeking, it's finding things, it's open to trying new things. But it does that so much throughout its life that it needs to find exactly what works for it. It doesn't mean it will never try new things ever again. It just needs to learn how to be closed when it finds just what is correct for it. And it's the same thing with the right fixed second color. It's closed in order to learn how to be open, because with the right fixed second color, which you could say is more communal in a sense, it's more connected to its environment and what kind of people are around it, it gets a sense of what it likes and what it doesn't like without even taking it into itself first. And you could say that their digestive system is very suspicious of outcomes. That's one way of thinking about it. You could say that their digestive system is suspicious of outcomes. They're not certain about how things are necessarily going to turn out. They don't know when it's going to come next or where it's going to come next, whether in terms of food or lifestyle, because when it's right fixed, a lot of things are coming in from many different angles. It's sort of like a right fixed second color is trying to be rigid in an environment that is continually pulling their attention in many different directions. but they know they like what they like when they like it, and that's how it's always going to be. So what happens is that a right fixed second color is extremely rigid, much more rigid than a left fixing second color. And the nature of that right fixed second color being closed is that they are closed in order to learn how to be open. I've noticed that right fixed second color individuals can have severe digestion problems because it's as if their body is holding on to everything because it does not want to let go. It just can't. They do not want to let go. And this also goes psychologically for things. They may carry things around with them from their childhood. Things like security blankets, things like just holding things and having things around them that make them feel secure because they have to have their special things. But it's also like this with their body itself. And I've seen this over and over and over again. Right fixed second color people who have poor digestion, they might go weeks without using the bathroom. So they might take things like oxy powder or some kind of magnesium tablets to help keep them regular because they know that they're just not going to the bathroom as much as they should. So I've often recommended to people with a right fixed second color that they need to learn how to be open because the fact that they're so closed all the time, both psychologically and how their body is operating, they need to learn how to be open to start helping things move. And this can be helped a lot with diet, like eating a lot more raw fruit, a lot more raw vegetables, juicing celery juice, first thing in the morning, every single morning on an empty stomach, like what Anthony William talks about. That is so important for a right fixed second color to get in the habit of doing this. Because their bodies, I think, they hold on to things in the same way that they, in their lives, may hold on to things that they really, really need. But they need to learn how to be open. They are so rigid. They are the most picky eaters on the planet. Right fixed second color people are the most picky eaters. But they need to learn how to be open to new things, how to take in something new, and how to find out what is just right for them in a world that you could say will help them if they're open to trying it. Raw fruit, raw vegetables, celery juice first thing in the morning every morning. This will really, really start to help their digestive system. It will really start helping things flow and move. They just have to be patient with the process. Because I've seen right fixed second color people, almost every single one I've ever talked to. And that's a lot. Pretty much every single one, 99% of them, have severe digestion problems because their body is holding on to everything. So what do they need to do? Start opening up and start letting go as much as they can. They can do this through healing. There could be healing techniques, modalities to help them let go. There are certain therapies that could help them let go, like letting go of the past, letting go of the security blanket, quote unquote. But that doesn't mean they can't appreciate their past. It doesn't mean that it's wrong for them to have cherished things from when they were a child or things that they feel secure with that they have around because it just gives them a sense of security. It's not wrong for them to have that and appreciate that, but it's really important for them to start opening up and letting go so that their digestive system can start opening up and letting go too, so they can have more trust in the world. When you look at the second color in terms of environment, you have markets. The left fixing of the second color is called internal, and the right fixing is called external. Now, the second color in terms of environment is just like the second color with determination in terms of having options, right? It enjoys having options, it loves having options available, and it wants to pick its favorites in terms of those options that are available immediately when we leave the cave. It's like there's suddenly an opening of space. Suddenly there's space. Now, space is really important to it too. Even like when you look at a second line, say somebody has a 2-4 profile, that's why the 2 is hermetic. It can be a hermit because it needs its space. It doesn't like being cajoled into just one thing or another thing. It wants to come to its own determination, you could say, of things through a kind of synchronicity, kind of serendipity. There is a spiritual quality to the two when things come to it in just the right way at just the right time, and it really appreciates that. Now, having a 2 environment, it's about having those options available to you, where if it's left fixed, it's internal because it's more personal. Remember, I said left fixing is kind of like tunnel vision. When it comes to environment, the left fixing tones are active and right fixing tones are passive. So if somebody has a left fixing tone with an environment, they're more active within that environment. They have an active role to play within it. And they feel more comfortable when they're in an environment like that they can be active within. So in terms of markets, the left fixed second color, it's called internal, meaning they would be a part of that market of showing things that are available, being a part of something that is offering some kind of option, being within the marketplace, having an active role in creating options for people, or being one of the many vendors that are available at a convention, an expo, no matter what it is, even online. There are so many vendors, you could say, online. A left-fixing second color environment person would very much enjoy being one of them that is offering options among many options. So that they themselves, they have their favorites, they can pick their favorites, but they're also offering options as well. They enjoy being in that kind of environment where there's certain options available, but when it's a right fixed second color, it's called external, meaning it's more passive, and it's not about having an active role that is strictly defined within that environment. They enjoy having options all around them, but not having necessarily a specific role to play within that environment. And remember that the 1 and the 2 are kind of simple. There's a simplicity about the 1 and the 2. It's not about things being so complicated when you get into a lot of the fine-tuned or multicultural, multifaceted technological things that concern modern civilization. The 2 is much more simple than that. So is the 1. When it comes to the 2 environment, those markets are simple. In the same way, when you go to a store, you don't see in the produce section all the different styles of food that are possible from different cultures with mixing everything together. That's what the third color is about, with either thirst or kitchens. It's about mixing together all the different possibilities, which we'll get to in a minute. The 2 is just about the possibility. You know, when you go to the produce section, you have a cart of avocados here, you have a cart of tomatoes there, you have a cart of chilies here, you have, the celery here, the this there, and those are the options. They're not all mixed up yet. You just want to be able to have the basic options of things that are available. Now, when we move to the 3 again is one step up from the 2, like I said, where you have all these options, but now what are we doing with all these options? We're mixing them all together. There is an element of the 3 that is very, very active and very, very stimulating. It needs to experience high levels of stimulation, sort of like the third line. You know, when somebody has a third line personality with their profile, they might be a 3-5 or a 3-6 or even a 1-3. The nature of that 3 is that it needs to be stimulated. It needs to move from one thing to the next thing to the next thing and have a constant flow of stimulation coming in. Now remember that lower colors concern the what. You could say things. Lower colors are about things in particular. Upper colors are about no thing in particular, more environmental. So when you look at the 3, the fact that it's at the very top of the lower colors, it's still concerning things, but those things are being very much transformed and mixed together. They are being manipulated. They are being switched up and changed around in a way that can create many different things out of the basic ingredients of the 2. So what the 3 does is that it enjoys focusing on what's possible with the combination of many different cultural elements, or the combinations of food, or the combinations of information, and it just needs to continually be stimulated in that way. You could say that the 3 is an important element in human design, whether you're looking at the 3rd tone, the 3rd color, or the 3rd line. There is something about the 3 that deeply concerns civilization itself and the elements of civilization. How things are transformed from one state into another state. Things like metallurgy, steel mills, cars, heaters, air conditioners, woodwork, construction. We have all these base elements with the 1 and the 2. Say, for example, with the 2, we have lumber. We have nails and other things you could build something with. But it's all these options. That's why the 2 concerns possibility. 2s love that. They love the what could be possible. 3 is when it's in there and it is building something. It is something. And then we have things like cities and towns and all these workings of civilization that it's all just going. It's very active. It's very stimulating. And a 3 needs that. A 3 needs to have that kind of stimulation for its cognition to be consistently stimulated by its environment. And if there is a left-fixing tone underneath that 3, it's called hot. If there's a right-fixing tone underneath it, it's called cold. Now, people are told, oh, if you have a left-fixing 3rd color, that means you really need to focus on hot food. Well, there's an element of that might be true, but it's just one element of it, because remember that color with determination isn't just about the food you eat. It's about the environment that you eat, so to speak. How your brain prefers to feed on the environment, because sustenance comes through in many different ways, not just with what we eat. It comes through with lifestyle, it comes through with information, how we're dealing with people, how we're dealing with things, all kinds of things. And with the 3, it needs to be continually stimulated. Continually stimulated. If it's a left-fixed 3rd color, you could say this is about kind of like decoding the matrix in a way. The 3 has an interesting thing about it when it comes to labeling the world we're in. It's very much connected to language. And our language is the matrix. It's the mental matrix that we're in. And what the 3 does is it needs to spot either lies or truth. And it needs to be very discerning about what is true or what is false within this world of 3-ness, within this world of so many things being mixed together. Because it's lower color, meaning it's things in particular, but you got to think about it like this. The 3 is almost into the upper colors. In the same way that the 3rd line on the hexagram is almost into the upper trigram. Not quite, but almost. Which means what? It's bumping into things. It might not know what. It's trying to balance its own life in so many ways. It's still concerning personal destiny, right? Because it's a lower trigram, it's personal. But it's so close to the transpersonal that it can bump into things. Unexpected things can happen. It can get unplanned for revelations about things. Things are just happening to it, and it's trying to balance all of this. That's why the keynote of the 3rd line is discovery. But the keynote of the 3rd color for determination is thirst. And you could interpret thirst as the thirst for new experiences, to keep things stimulating on that level. It's the same way you could understand the appetite of the 1st color in a few different ways. It's not just an appetite for food, it's an appetite for appreciation, being able to appreciate things unto themselves, and being able to satisfy that appetite. With the taste of the 2nd color, you can develop a taste for all kinds of things. Not just a taste for certain kinds of food, but a taste for certain kinds of information. A taste for a certain kind of lifestyle by going over and over certain things. You really develop a taste for it, a deep appreciation. With thirst, when it comes to the 3rd color, that thirst is about being quenched by experiences. Now, if it's left-fixed, that thirst needs to be quenched by experience. The third line is very experiential. The third color is very experiential. Very. If it's left fixed, it's hot. That means, when you boil water, that means the molecules are moving very, very fast. If anything is hot, that means the molecules in it are really bumping into each other quite a bit, really fast. That means there's kind of like a symbiosis between all the different things going on. A left fixed third color really likes that, for there to be a lot of things going on that it can use its gifts of cognition to be able to decode what's going on in a highly active way with information. And when it comes to food, it would like things to be mixed up a little bit. Yes, they might have their favorites, Remember that all the colors are built on top of one another. The appreciation of the second color is built off of the appreciation of the first color. The first color is things in particular, very like things unto themselves. The second color is an appreciation of the different kinds of things and combinations of different kinds of things. The third is about appreciation of how we can possibly mix them. So within the three, you could say, is already the appreciation of the one and the appreciation of the two. But what the three wants to do is it thirsts for something new, something different. How can we mix this up? How can we change this? And even when it comes to the kinds of information or lifestyle a left fixed third color might deal with, it has to be very active in terms of its decoding of the matrix, because the 3 is very much connected to our mind. Say, for example, when you look at the Ajna binary on tone with the 3 and the 4. The 3 is outer vision, the 4 is inner vision. The 3 is kind of like being stimulated by things that periodically come into your vision. It's kind of like a dog. If you have a tennis ball and you throw it, that dog is going to want to chase it and get it because it's something that disturbed the visual field. It's something that disturbed the environment, and they want to chase it. Now, I'm not saying that people with a third color determination are dogs. I'm saying that they are deeply stimulated by things that come into their vision like that, things that come into their vicinity like that. They want to be able to grab it and take it apart, you could say, and get involved in it. In a very real way, the 3 is the center of the action. It's where all the action is. There's so much going on with the 3. But within all that action of things being mixed together, all these different transformations that might be going on, the 3 needs to have discernment between what is true and what is false. Now, this is what leads to the third line anarchist keynote. The third line is also concerned with what's true and what's false, because it's always looking for what doesn't work. Things always show itself to a third line. Oh, this doesn't work. And this can lead to a kind of pessimistic nature with the 3. If they're always focusing on what doesn't work, what's wrong, what's a lie, But they can also become a Mr. Fix-It. They can also be very joyful in terms of what they discover all the time. Oh, I found something that doesn't work. Isn't that amazing? That means I know what does work now. And this process of discovery can be a very beautiful thing. It can be a very beautiful thing to find out what doesn't work, what's a lie, what deserves to be burned to the ground. The third color, in terms of definition, is sort of like that in a way. It needs to find out what is not worthy of passing forward into the upper colors, you could say. It's the same kind of thing with the third line. It's kind of like finding what is not worthy of passing further into that transpersonal environment of the upper trigram. If something is not worthy, something isn't balancing right, then it's going to be burned to the ground. This is where the anarchist nature of the third line comes from. With the third color determination, it's sort of like that. They need to find what is worthy of passing into upper color reality and what is not worthy of passing into upper color reality. Because this world is a huge matrix when you look at just how many things are mixed together with the civilization that we've built. It isn't just elementary elements that we find with second color reality, with lumber, with, like iron ore, or certain elementary metals that haven't been smelted or mixed yet. You know, that's not what the 3 is about. The 3 is about mixing all of this stuff together and creating a very massive civilization out of it with a lot of complexity going on within it. Now, with that complexity can come confusion. There can also be false belief systems that come out of it with how people are conceptualizing their reality. Because we build all of this with our minds, with our creative minds. But that doesn't mean that all of it should be the baseline consensus reality for everyone, that it will be healthy. It's easy to get lost in all that stuff, especially if you're born into it and you don't know any better. Suddenly you're just born into this situation. That's why we need third color people. They're sort of like Neo or Morpheus in the Matrix. They're here to find agents of the Matrix. They're here to find out what's false. They're here to find out what works, what doesn't work, especially if it's a left fixed third color. Now, in terms of dietary stuff, you could say, yeah, they could experiment with food that is more warm or heated up, right? Things that are more mixed together, you could say. But when we get to a right fixed third color, it's called cold. And they will be told, well, you should try to eat more cold food all the time. Yeah, that might be something to experiment with, but it also has to do with their cognition and their lifestyle, how they absorb information, how they absorb the world. Now, the left fixing third color is very active, and that's part of why it's called hot. But the right fixing third color is really interesting. It's still active, but it's active in a different way. Because the nature of the 3 is to be stimulated. But how would a 3 with a right fixing tone underneath it, how would it be stimulated? It would be more stimulated by what is on the periphery, what is going on around it with other people, while at the same time still looking for that kind of third color stimulation. It can come through in any different way, but it doesn't have an agenda. That's how you could look at left fixing tones and right fixing tones with determination. Left fixing tones kind of have a big agenda with what they're doing. Right fixing tones don't necessarily have a big agenda with what they're doing. A lot of their experience comes through with trying to get along with the environment that they're in. And this is an interesting thing. I mean, this is why the right fixed first color is alternating its appreciation. That's why the right fixed second color is closed, because it's really rigid. It wants to maintain its sense of security in that it's being affected by its environment quite a bit. The right fixing third color is called cold in that it's being stimulated by things in a different kind of way. It's not focused and going into the matrix all the time, so to speak. The matrix is already happening around it, and the appreciation that a right fixed third color is experiencing is quite different. It is not going to be in the middle of something that is very active all the time. It is going to shift. Something else is going to come in. And the way it handles this is through a sense of coolness, or you could say coldness. It has to be able to detach itself from whatever it was focusing on in the moment. And it does that by being cool, or you could say cold. It can be really attracted to something over here. But then something else happens through that kind of rightness, whether coming from another person, something that just popped in their head in that right kind of way, that is it has to do with a soft focus. Left fixing is very focused. It's like tunnel vision. But right fixing is very soft. It's like soft focus. So if you have a very stimulating third color with a right fixing tone underneath it, that is very soft focus, how is that soft focus dealing with all the action and stimulation of that third color? Being able to be stimulated without being attached to what you're being stimulated by. And that creates a nature of coolness or coldness. It doesn't mean they're a cold person, necessarily. It just means they enjoy being stimulated by things in a different kind of way that is without a big personal agenda, because people with a left fixing third color, they have like lasers for eyes, sort of like, Cyclops in the X-Men. They are really like focused in on things. They're in the middle of the action of whatever that might be. They enjoy mixing things together and seeing how things can be combined in so many different ways. They love decoding the matrix. They love seeing what's a lie, seeing what's true, seeing what's false, seeing what holds up to scrutiny, all that kind of thing. But when you have a right fixing tone within that same color, it becomes a different kind of thing. A very different kind of thing, even though it's the same color. They are not attached so as much to being within the middle of all the action as the left fixing tone is within that third color. Even though they still appreciate, it's all about appreciation. They still deeply appreciate the action. They still deeply appreciate seeing the different ways that things can be mixed together culturally with information, no matter what it is, all the elements of civilization that we have that really account for everything concerning threeness and mixing things together, exactly what's possible with all that. But to have a rightness that's fixing that cognition, you're not necessarily attached to it, even though you can be stimulated by it. So this creates a kind of coolness with your personality, a kind of coolness with your cognition. Now, you can experiment with cold food and see if you would prefer that. Absolutely. Things that are not heated up all the time. Maybe even things that are not as mixed together. You could get inspired to try different things at different times depending on what you're around, as long as it's stimulating enough. But it's not something that should be like an intense focus all the time, as if it's your job to decode it. Because right fixing isn't necessarily here to decode all the lies or all the elements of the matrix as the left fixing is. But it can still appreciate the nature of things in that third color way. Now, when we get to the third color environment with kitchens, this is really fascinating. The left fixing third color environment is wet, and the right fixing third color environment is called dry. And the overall keynote is kitchens. Now, this is fascinating because what happens in kitchens? It's where we mix things together. We have all the elements of the markets, right? We have all the elements of the second color. And then when we get to the three, that's when we start mixing them together. That's where we have all the fire, all the ingredients that are, you can have the same ingredients and make completely different things. I mean, you could watch a movie like Burnt. That's a really cool movie about high-end chefs and high-end restaurants and what it takes to be that dedicated of a chef. And it's a fascinating thing how dedicated these people are to make the dining experience as much of like almost a spiritual transformational thing, to make people's souls sing with appreciation of what's possible when you're in a kitchen, when you can mix all these different things together. What's possible with taste. Not just rudimentary taste of the second color, but mixing all these different things together to create a whole experience. Now remember that the three is very experiential. It needs to have a whole experience. If you go buy, a $200 dinner at a high-end restaurant, you're buying an experience. You're not buying necessarily just the nutrition of it, or just because you like to have your favorite things, or that it's something you eat every single day like a second color might. You're buying a whole experience that somebody is expertly trying to give you through their knowledge and expertise in mixing so many different things together. Different kinds of foods, different kinds of oils, different kinds of herbs, spices, you name it. But this isn't just about, living in a kitchen, you could say, with the third color environment. The third color environment is more about cultural elements being mixed together. Cultural elements. You could say it's the typical urban environment where there's a lot going on. There's so many different things being mixed together. with a left fixed third color environment, there is a deep symbiosis. There's a heavy saturation of symbiosis between all the elements of that environment. That's why it's called wet. Now, people are told if they have a left fixed third color environment that they should maybe try living in the Pacific Northwest in the United States where it's raining for half the year, or maybe in a rainforest area where there's a lot of rain. They could experiment with that, but the thing with environment is that you can find any of these environments anywhere, really, where there's civilization, especially with the lower colors. The lower colors, in terms of environment, really have to do with the fundamentals of civilization itself. Caves, markets, kitchens. The foundation, the shelter, the options that are available, and mixing together all these different things, different cultural elements, different kinds of architecture, all these different things, right? So lower colors have to do with really where. But when you're looking at the third color with this highly active environment, when it is left fixed, there is an active nature that one is participating in within that environment. Say when you look at a rainforest, you have all this deep symbiosis between all the things that are alive there. You know, you have a log here with a mushroom growing out of it, with a little bug that lives inside of that is growing off of a cliff that is next to this, and they're all like kind of living on and through and within each other. Not to mention all of the plant life, you know, everything that is just so deeply interconnected with each other. For a person with a left fixed third color environment, they would love that kind of environment. You could actually find that kind of environment in a city, for example, being within all the mixing together. Like if you go to a mall, for example, with the food court, you have a Greek restaurant here, you have an Italian restaurant there, you have an Indian restaurant there. Now, a left fixed third color environment, they would love that kind of environment, whether it's in a city or wherever. They enjoy seeing all these elements being mixed together. They love that. And to be able to be a part of it somehow is very exciting for a left fixed third color. I mean, I've talked to people with a left fixed third color environment. They always have an affinity for big cities. I talked to one guy recently. He's like, I just love New York City. I don't know why. I want to move there someday. I'm like, yeah, you would. Somebody like you would like to live in a place like that. Or if they don't necessarily like big cities, they could try a place that is more wet in terms of rain and vegetation and wildlife. You know, because I think it is possible for someone with a left fixed third color environment to like nature too. It doesn't mean they don't like nature. They can, but it has to be dense. There has to be symbiosis. There has to be a heavy saturation of things living on, within, around each other, right? Sort of like when you look at the Pacific Northwest. There's so much rain. It's so lush. There's so much vegetation because it keeps consistently raining there so much. Left fixed third color environment would love that. They would love that. But here's an interesting thing. When you get to the right fixed third color environment, they do not like that. It needs to be dry because it's passive. They need to be able to be passive within that active environment, which is an interesting thing with the 3. I mean, because the 3, like I said, is inherently stimulating. There's something very stimulating about the 3. But the way the right fixing deals with it, it's sort of like how the right fixed third color determination deals with it, by being cold or cool. The way the right fixed third color environment deals with it is called dry, meaning it deeply appreciates things unto themselves that are self-contained. Say, for example, people with a right fixed third color environment like deserts. It doesn't mean they need to go live in a desert. It just means they appreciate, you could say, the symbolism and the archetype of a desert in and of itself. The fact that there are living beings within the desert, like cacti, different plants, different animals, they are very self-sustaining. I knew someone with a right fixed third color environment, and they lived in a really rainy area and they didn't like it. They said, I wish I could just pave my entire yard and get rid of all this wetness and all this grass and all this mold and all these trees. And I told them, well, you really would like that because you have a right fixed third color environment, which is dry. You don't like all this symbiosis and all this wetness and all these millions of blades of grass and all these bugs and all this mold and all this stuff. You don't like that. But she does like things like cacti. And say somebody had a yard that was full of rocks. You've seen yards like that, these landscaped yards that are just full of rocks, little rocks. And here and there are just desert plants. There might be a cactus here. There might be an aloe plant here. There might be a palm tree there. And they're spread out, and there's rocks between them. She loves that kind of stuff. And I told her again, you would love that kind of stuff, having a right fixed third color environment. Remember that right fixing is not about having a big agenda. Especially, like, say, when you look at environment, it's passive. Being able to be passive within an environment. Now, when you're looking at it in terms of kitchens, it's like needing to be passive within a very active environment. How can you be passive within a very active environment? It means you have a deep appreciation for things that can take care of themselves. They have an inner self-sustaining nature. They're not just being pulled apart by everything. Because when you look at right fixing, it's very much affected by the environment, right? And if you're in a very active third color environment, you don't just want to be pulled into a million different directions all the time. You want to be able to appreciate things that are self-sustaining within that environment, that are not so corrupted. I mean, because that's something that can happen with a third color environment or even a third color determination. There is the possibility of things becoming corrupted. Through too much mixing, it's as if it can't sustain itself, so you might have infrastructure collapsing, you might have certain things that buckle. But it's a learning process, kind of like the trial and error nature of the third line. But when it comes to the right fixing third color environment, things that are self-sustaining and can have a kind of self-sufficiency within them, even in a very active environment. That is very attractive. That's like the desert. When you look at a cactus, it's as if it's saying, I am my own being. I mean, it's covered in needles. It's saying, in a way, stay away from me. I have my own inner reality here. I might be in some amount of symbiosis with my environment. Of course, when it rains, I soak up the rainwater, but I have reserves of it within me. I have my own reserves of water within me. And I can maintain myself within this environment. I'm not being pulled apart. This desert is not destroying me. I'm built for the desert. I can handle it not raining for a month if that's what needs to happen, right? That's kind of like what the cactus is saying. So if a right fixed third color person is visiting someplace like a city, they would like to experience it in a way where they are connected to things that are integral, things that have high integrity that are in such deep symbiosis with everything else. There has to be a high level of integrity. Another name for the third color environment is also laboratories, not just kitchens, but laboratories. There is a kind of scientific nature to the third color environment, even the third color determination. Testing things, seeing what happens when you mix this with that, right? Third color people could be very interested in that because, again, it has to do with discovery. What happens when you mix this with that? Something that you might not even be prepared for. Now, when we get to the upper colors, something really fascinating happens. We move away from the what, or things in particular, into the more environmental how, or no thing in particular. The upper colors are kind of transcendent in a way. In the same way, the upper trigram of the hexagram is transpersonal. It's not about an individual person. It's about, like when you get to the fourth line, networking. It's not about just one person or just one group of people. It's about no one person in particular. It's about networking in between people, making connections between people, opening up opportunities in that way. It's the same kind of thing that's going on with the fourth color, being the foundation of the upper colors. Now, this is what it has in common with the first color. They are both the foundation, but they go about it in different ways, being a foundation. The fourth color, being the foundation of the how, or the no thing in particular, means that it is expert in moving in between things. It's not just one way. The special thing about the fourth color is that it can sample all of the different colors. It can sample all the different kinds of cognition, all the different kinds of lifestyles. It can sample the different ways of being. So you could say it's natural for a fourth color to be in some kind of transference. A fourth color could actually live out a second color lifestyle. It could live out a fifth color lifestyle. It could even live out a first color lifestyle. The only thing a fourth color person needs to be aware of is its left or right fixing. If it has a left fixing tone underneath it, it needs to be calm. Their sampling of all the different ways, it just needs to be calm. If it's calm, then they can successfully sample all the different ways. If it's right fixing, it needs to be stimulated. What I find interesting is that Ra, who had the human design system downloaded into him in 1987, he had a left fixed fourth color. Now, there are a lot of things about his body graph that allowed him to really understand where other people were coming from in many ways. I don't agree with literally everything he would say, because some of it really is just his perspective. But the fact that he had a left fixed fourth color determination, he had to keep things very calm. And within that calmness, he could sample the different ways of being. He could sort of see what it would be like to be this person or that person. And that's why he was able to discuss so well these different ways of being. I mean, Ra would say that he had a hard time leaving his house. He was really concerned with keeping things as calm as possible for himself. And this actually allowed him to flesh out the human design system as much as he could as an individual. I'm doing it in my own way, and he did it in his way, right? I'm kind of synthesizing a lot here to make it as understandable as possible and as practical as possible for people. But with the fourth color, it's called touch. The keynote is called touch. And when you think of touch, you could even think of it in terms of like touch and go. You know, you touch something and then you can let go of it. And then you touch it again and then you let go of it. It's very sensational in a way. The fourth color has a lot to do with the nervous system and the apprehension of things cognitively. And the way a fourth color determination person deals with the world cognitively is it's very sensational. It feels certain ways. And what it has in common with the first color, actually, is this appetite to experience something. It's the foundation of the upper colors, or the environmental how, which means it's setting the example of how the upper colors function, with no thing in particular. So the fourth color has this way of experiencing not just one color. In the same way, the fourth line of the hexagram is not about just one person, one personal destiny. It can't help but network. It needs to network. It's not about just one thing. With the fourth color, it's exactly like that. It needs to experience all these different ways of being, to absorb them, to be interested in them, especially if it's a left fixed fourth color. The reason it needs to be calm is because there is so much going on with a 4. It kind of has something in common with the 3. There is a certain kind of energetic stimulation with the 3 and the 4. The 1 and the 2 have certain things in common. The 3 and the 4 have certain things in common because they're both bumped up against that boundary point between the lower and the upper. And the 5 and the 6 have certain things in common. What the 3 and the 4 have in common is this transformational aspect, or this stimulating aspect. when you look at the level of tone, you can see this dividing line between left tones and right tones. That dividing line that the 3 and the 4 are so close to means that the 3 and the 4 are in a way open to mutative possibilities. It's just that the 3 experiences it in a different way than the 4. For the 3, it's more focused. For the 4, it's more energetic, concerning the environment, concerning the how of everything. It's not about what with a 4. Now, when it comes to dietary stuff, anybody can benefit from a cleaner diet. Anybody can benefit from cutting out processed food, too much fat, dairy, gluten, eggs, stuff like that. If anybody is having a hard time with their health, cutting out that stuff and getting into clean eating and upping your fruit and vegetable intake by a lot can help anybody, really. Because it's been said that people with a 4th color determination can eat anything they want. It doesn't matter. They can literally get away with anything. They can eat junk food from dawn till dusk. As long as they're doing it either calm or stimulated, it should be fine. I don't tell people that. I think that's dangerous to tell people that. You want to be able to respect your body, right? But when I talk about upper colors and that it's about no thing in particular, of course, clean eating and taking care of yourself and being healthy, that's all good and great. But that's not where the primary focus is with upper colors. The primary focus with upper colors is about the environment. What kind of environment are you in? How does this environment feel? It's sort of like how the upper colors have an affinity with right fixing tones. How left fixing tones are more focused and right fixing tones have a kind of soft focus. They're more peripheral. Left fixing tones, things in particular. Right fixing tones, no thing in particular. It's the same thing with the lower and upper colors. But we can see how there's an interesting combination of these. How you can have an upper color with both a left fixing tone underneath it or a right fixing tone underneath it. So if you have a 4th color that is left and it's focused, it needs to be calm in how it's sampling all the different ways. Otherwise, there's just too much going on. So that is pretty much all a 4th color person needs to be aware of when it comes to transference. It's their natural state to be in transference. They just need to make sure it's either calm so that they can experience each way like one way at a time. Because it's left, it's focused. Or if it's right, it can be very stimulating. They can be in an environment that is very stimulating. When they're learning something new, as long as it's very stimulating, it's good for them. Because with a right fixing tone underneath the 4th color, or any color, it has to do with the people you're around very much and how they might pull things out of you that you might not even know are there. Because the brain stores things differently if you have a left fixing tone or a right fixing tone. If it's a left fixing tone, it's kind of like we have walls built around our awareness that help us focus on one thing at a time so we don't get distracted. But with right fixing tones, those walls are taken away. And our brain stores information in very large quantities that we might not even be aware of because so much is coming into our awareness and being stored. And if somebody around you asks you a question or is talking about a certain subject, if you have a right fixing tone with your determination, if you're right cognitively, answers might be coming out of you that you didn't even know you had, that you didn't even know were there. Things that were stored inside of you a long time ago, because with rightness, there's a lot more action in a certain sense, even though you could say left is active, right is passive. But that's kind of a misnomer. Rightness isn't inactive. It's not that it's inactive. It's actually highly active. It's so active that you can't just focus on one thing at a time. Lower colors may be able to experience that rightness in a more one thing at a time kind of way. Sort of like with the first color. If a first color has a right fixing tone underneath it, it can alternate with its appreciation of things in particular. But when we get to upper colors, those right fixing tones have a lot to do with a lot of things going on at once. Because not only is it a right fixing tone, it's an upper color as well. So you could say that it's very stimulating. And this is the foundation with the fourth color. It's very energetic. It has a lot to do with the nervous system, being excited by new things, new kinds of information. There's so much coming through with a fourth color. But if it's focused, they just need to be careful with how it's coming in. Like with Ra, having a left fixed fourth color. There is so much available energetically in the world that he had to be very strategic with what he's allowing in at any one time, because he could experience it very deeply through his own being. But if it was a right fixing tone, he could be out milling about with people, no problem, and have all kinds of multi-simultaneous experiences, not just one thing at a time, experimentation with the different cognitive ways of experiencing the world, all the different types of the body graph, all the different ways of being. That's kind of like a left fixed thing. Even human design itself is kind of like a left-oriented knowledge. But with rightness, it's not one thing at a time. It's everything all at once. Everything all at once. So if a right fixed fourth color person is, say for example, trying to really focus on one thing at a time, you could say they're not honoring their true cognition. It's okay to have a lot of things going on at once, or to be stimulated by more than one thing. Say they're getting stimulated by a kind of information, a kind of way of being. Maybe they want to adopt a certain lifestyle. They can be very stimulated by that. But they can just as easily jump into another thing and be really stimulated by that, and then maybe go back to the other thing. So this is kind of what it has in common with the first color, how they're both the foundation. They both have an appetite, but that appetite is being expressed in different ways. But I'll get into that, the nature of transference of the 1 into the 4 later. There's another thing to be aware of about the nature of food with a fourth color. The fourth color can see food as being just entertaining. Food can seem strange to a fourth color. In fact, I've seen fourth color people really gravitate toward the idea of breatharianism, that they don't really need to eat. Maybe they can just live off of the environment more. Now, if you want to experiment with that kind of thing and you're a fourth color and you feel gravitated toward the idea of fasting or the idea of very long-term fasting, I recommend doing it very, very carefully and knowing what you're doing. Anthony William did a show on the truth of fasting. And he talked about some people who can take it really far. Even he's taken it really far in the past, like well over, 40 days, 60 days on just water. It's possible for people to do that. And I've noticed that people with fourth colors can be gravitated toward that because it's about sensations and the environment. It's the foundation of the environment. So they are really embedded in an environmental way of being, which is what people are calling pranic living, meaning the body is truly feeding off of the environment, not just the sustenance that you bring into it. That's kind of like a first color thing, appreciating things unto themselves. But the 4 is about the deep appreciation of no thing in particular. No thing in particular. There's also things going on with a fourth color that may entail the idea that there's no such thing as a cause for any disease. There's no such thing as viruses that might cause you harm, this kind of thing, because it's too much of a thing in particular. There's too much causation with that. Causation is kind of a lower color thing. It's about maintenance of the physical vehicle, but upper colors shouldn't have to worry about that kind of thing. When you think about it, upper colors shouldn't have to concern themselves with lower color stuff. Lower colors set the example. And when we look at the world, we see a lot of lower color things that are not setting good examples, like terrible food, fast food, rancid oils, things being put in food that we don't want. That's like lower colors setting a really bad example. But the more lower colors become aware, very, very aware of health stuff, dietary stuff, they can start setting a good example. All these raw vegan restaurants popping up everywhere. All these vegan restaurants popping up everywhere. Even if they're not vegan, they are becoming much more health conscious. which is good. So that upper colors don't have to worry so much about the particulars of all that stuff. But given the climate that we're in, it is important for lower colors to really pick up the slack and become responsible for setting the example for upper colors. Because I've noticed for upper colors, it's difficult for them when they're surrounded by so much temptation, so many things pulling their awareness in so many different directions. They might be hurting themselves in ways that it's not up to them to take 100% responsibility for, because it's about the environment. And if they're in a bad environment, yes, when they're aware of it, they can pull themselves out of that environment. But say, for example, if you have a fourth color and you're buying into the law of attraction stuff, there is some truth in it, but you have to be careful. You don't hurt yourself. You didn't just manifest or create your illness or your sickness or your issues with your mind or with your belief system. It is important to look after your health and to be aware of what's coming into your body. Even though you might see food as kind of a silly thing. Even Ra himself said this as a fourth color. Food is kind of funny to me. It's just kind of funny. Food, what is it? It's a funny thing because it's a thing in particular. Like I have to take this and chew it up and swallow it. It's kind of silly. It just seems funny. There's something about it with a fourth color. And many fourth color people, like I said, entertain the idea of not even needing it. Do I really need this? Because I'm so environmentally oriented, it seems like my cognition feeds on the environment in a powerful way. Is it possible to just use that as sustenance? There is some possibility in that. What I'm saying is be careful in moving into it, because you need to be aware of possible detoxing. You don't just want to jump into something like that head first. You have to experiment. You have to work up to it. You have to have a lower color foundational example of bringing in a lot more healing foods, a lot more juices, a lot more fruit, and go through a kind of cleansing that might even take years to build you up to the point where you can start pushing off into fasting more. Maybe a week at a time, maybe a couple weeks at a time if you feel really confident about it. But it's something you want to be careful about. Just, you don't want to just jump into it so suddenly. When we look at the fourth color environment, it's called mountains. And it has a left fixing expression of active and a right fixing expression of passive. Now, mountains is a fascinating environment because it has to do with perspective. In human design, the lower color environments are called hardscape. It has a lot to do with civilization, like I said before, the elements of civilization. But the upper colors are called landscape, meaning it's more broad. It's not necessarily about a place in particular, but about the broader layout of the land. You could think of it again as no thing in particular. It's not the dense what, it's the more environmental how. So mountains, it's called mountains because it has perspective. It's just like the fourth color determination. It can experience all the different ways without being a native within those ways. If somebody has a fourth color environment, they could live in a markets environment. They could live in a valleys environment, a fifth color environment. They could even live in a first color caves environment. They just have to be either active or passive about it. It's the same way with the fourth color determination. The nature of mountains, with its perspective, is that it's not tied to just one environment. I have mountains. Mountains is my environment, and it's a right fixed environment, passive. So in a way, that's like being in any environment, being able to be in any environment as long as I have perspective, as long as I get to be like a fly on the wall. And I've always fantasized about this when I was growing up. And I even have dreams about it now, you could say, like fantasies about like a way of living that would be really cool for me. And it always has to do with being really up high and not being involved with what's down below, no matter where it is. When I was younger, I would fantasize that I lived on the top shelf of a bookcase. And I was like a little being, like maybe a millimeter tall, and I lived in a little tiny apartment at the very top of a bookshelf. And I would look down and see everything happening below the room, and I'm not connected to it, but it's a nice view. I have a good perspective. I also used to fantasize about living way up in a tree. In one of the top branches, I have a nice apartment and beautiful windows that I can look down and see the yard. I can see the tops of the houses, and it's a nice perspective. I don't have an active role within that environment down there. I can just see it and have perspective about it, and it makes me feel really good to have that kind of perspective. If you have a left fixed fourth color environment, active, you're still detached, you could say. You're able to experience any environment, but you have more of an active role. It would feel more correct for you to have an active role within those environments. Something where you're being observed. Rightness is about observing. Leftness is about being observed, like you have an active role, right? But if it's a left fixed fourth color environment, you could have an active role within markets, you could have an active role within kitchens, you could have an active role within valleys or shores. As long as it's active, but you can jump in between them. It doesn't need to be just one or the other. That's the kind of the fascinating thing about the four. It's not about just one thing in particular. It can move between them. Me having a right fixed fourth color, it's kind of like no matter where I go, I'm in an environment, but I'm also not in it at the same time. I can really appreciate the different places I visit and the different places I might live, as long as I have perspective. I'm not tied to it. You could say I'm not karmically tied to it. When we get to the fifth color is really fascinating because it has a lot of ability. In the same way, the fifth line has certain abilities, and people notice that there are things going on with the fifth line. That's why they receive a lot of projection. That's why people look up to a fifth line to either deliver them something, teach them something, show them something, bridge something for them, because they can sense there's something going on with a fifth line, like, you have something I need. It seems like you have something I've been looking for a long time. This is what the fifth line radiates. This is also what's going on with the fifth color. The fifth color has an ability to unlock the tonal infrastructure of any color. This is why the 5 has a lot to do with information. It also has to do with patterns in a certain sense. It's just that the way the 5 deals with patterns is different than the way the 2 deals with patterns. This is something the 2 and the 5 have in common. The 2 cognition enjoys patterns. It likes finding patterns. And those patterns have to be just right for it. With the 5, it's also expert at finding patterns. But those patterns are more upper color, meaning more environmental. Those patterns don't have to be necessarily very personal. These patterns have a lot to do with what's going on with the environment around them, and how a fifth color decodes those patterns, deconstructs those patterns, puts those patterns back together is very magical in a way, because the keynote of the 5 is sound with determination. Now, sound goes beyond audible sound. You could think of it in terms of frequency as well. There's a kind of subtle nature to the 5. And within that subtlety, it can pick up all kinds of things. And through being able to pick up things within people, within information, it's as if it can deliver something that is sort of like the fifth line. It can bridge something for somebody. It can deliver something unique to someone. It can help deconstruct information in a way that is very useful for another person. If it's left fixed, it's called high. If it's right fixed, it's called low. Now, high sound means high volume of information. You could take it literally to mean like being in a loud place. You know, people with a left fixed fifth color, I've noticed they are perfectly fine listening to loud television. turned on in the background, or having loud talk radio going in their car. Just something to where the information is always coming in because they enjoy being stimulated in that way. Their cognition is taking it all apart, always. It's able to get in and sort of gauge where things are on a tonal level. Are things right? Are things left? This feels like a second tone, or this feels like a sixth tone. In the same way that the fourth color can experience all the different colors, the fifth color can experience all the different tones. That's the ability within the five. It can get into a particular lifestyle, a particular color, and get beneath it and see what's the driving cognition underneath it. Is it left or is it right? And it does this by subtly feeling the frequency of the expression of the colors. Now, everybody is expressing their color all the time. Everybody is. What the fifth color can do is get within it and see what's driving it. See what's driving the expressions of things. That's why if somebody has a left fixed fifth color, they enjoy taking apart information and can really see what's really underneath, what's within. They can take it apart, put it back together, and they are comfortable having a high frequency of information coming into themselves. They can easily understand it. They can easily grok it. They can easily take it apart. They can easily put it back together. There is no such thing as information overload to a left fixed fifth color. It just doesn't exist. No such thing as information overload. They can read as much as they want. They can watch as much documentaries as they want. They can watch as many movies as they want. They can listen to as much talk radio as they want, whether they're eating or not. I mean, when it comes to dietary stuff in the environment, it's said that people with a left fixed fifth color just need to make sure there's a lot going on in their environment. Like if they were to eat at a loud restaurant with a lot of people talking, just all a left fixed fifth color would actually kind of like that environment because their cognition feeds off of it. Their cognition feeds off of being able to get in and decode all the different sounds and things going on around them. But you could also think of high sound in terms of just a high frequency of information coming in. It doesn't necessarily have to do with high sound literally, but a high frequency of information coming in. And being able to decode it, being able to handle it, and at the same time deliver it to others if they need it. Left fixing tones are a bit more selfish though, you could say, no matter where they are, no matter what color you have. When you have a left fixing tone, it is more personal. In the same way, the lower trigram is kind of personal, right? It has to do with things in particular. It's more focused, tunnel vision, It has to do with the individual and their focus, what they choose to focus on. But the five enjoys taking apart information in a way that is very practical. It's the same thing with the fifth line, you could say. It needs to be able to offer things that are practical. If it's not practical, people are going to think you're just a charlatan or that you're just being seductive for no reason because they looked up to you. It seemed like you had a special ability. It seemed like you had something for them. They were projecting on you. Maybe you have a lot of fifth lines in your body graph. But then when you don't live up to the projection, the practicality that could have come out of that fifth line is now just seen as static. It's seen as if you're not really utilizing it correctly. Now this is the same thing that goes on with the fifth color. It needs to be able to offer things that are practical, either practical advice, practical ways of looking at things, because it gets into the inner structure of the color and can sense what's going on. And when it delivers that to others through its own cognitive gifts, it just needs to be something practical. Otherwise, it's just noise. It's just static. You're just you just have this cognition that you're not really utilizing for any reason. But for a fifth color, that's almost impossible because when they're absorbing information, it can always be used for something as long as the information keeps coming in, especially if it's a left fixed fifth color. If it's a right fixed fifth color, it's called low. This means it's more, again, peripheral. And it has more to do with the people that they're around and how other people might pull things out of them that they didn't know that they had in them. It doesn't mean that they can't still absorb information or read books or watch documentaries. The fifth color is all about information. You could say the internet is a huge fifth color environment. The internet itself. It's a very, very fifth color kind of thing. All this information is being pooled together. There is so much going on with all this information. But it's about no thing in particular, upper colors. As long as there isn't an attachment to things in particular, being either one way or another way. But the right fixed fifth color being low. There's a fascinating thing about this. People with a right fixed fifth color determination, it's not about acute information, even though they can still absorb it, like I said. It's about information that can come in from any angle. People with right fixed fifth colors have this ability to get instant reads on people through their tone, through the subtle frequencies coming off of their aura, through the words that they're using, things like that. You've heard the saying, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. Right fixed fifth color people are very sensitive to that. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. It's not what you're living, it's how you're living, right? It's not the what of the lower colors, it's the how of the upper colors. And the fifth color has a really fascinating ability of being able to gauge that kind of stuff, to see what's within. Especially a right fixed fifth color, because again, right fixing tones are more communal. So when a right fixed fifth color is around other people, they are picking up frequencies and subtle forms of information coming from those people that they can then either tell them about. They might pull information out of them that they didn't even know they had. Say somebody is talking about something and you have a right fixed fifth color, and suddenly you're reminded of a book that you read 10 years ago and you never really thought about it yourself. It's not something you think about a lot. But the fact that they're talking about it, suddenly this information is coming up out of the depths for them. And it's perfectly for them. And you can, in the way the fifth color can, decode it for them. You can take it apart, put it back together, and give it to them in just the right way for them. Because maybe you are also very attuned to their subtle frequencies. What tonal character do they have? How is their cognition functioning? I have a friend who is a natural shaman, and she had a job for very long that, while it was fulfilling, she was always performing the role of a shaman for people on these jobs. And then she started to realize she was a natural at this, like being able to read people's frequencies, being able to get instant reads on people, their inner state of being, and to also be able to clear them. Like, I'm just going to clear this for you. Then she actually started to take classes in shamanism and learn some techniques, and she's just a natural at it. And when I learned about her having a right fixed fifth color, I told her that that's a big part of the reason why. You're very sensitive to other people's auras, things that might be attached to them, whether it's really thick patterns from the past, ancestral stuff, there could be entities, energies, forces, all kinds of things. Right fixed fifth color people are really sensitive to that. And they can fine tune it if they appreciate what it is. Like I said before about appreciation, it's a really big deal to be able to appreciate the nature of your own color, how that color works. With the 5, it has a lot in common with the 5th line, which is about delivering something practical to either the world or another person. The left fixing 5th color is more personal. The right fixing 5th color is more transpersonal or communal. But there has to be some level of practicality with all the information that's available for them, with what they're able to take apart and put back together and decode in such short order. It's really magical what they're able to do. There's a lot of almost superhuman quality within it. You could say there's a shaman type quality within it. Now, what the 2 and the 5 have in common is options.
there being options available. But the options of the 2 are different than the options of the 5. The options of the second color are much more specific for the individual. They're much more concerning the what. The options of the 5 are much more expansive, much more broad. It's about no thing in particular. The options of the 5 are so expansive that, say, for example, somebody with a left fixed fifth color, they might really enjoy something like Amazon or any kind of chain, any kind of business that is offering a lot of something, either a lot of information, whether it's some kind of news agency. I noticed that people with left fixed fifth colors are really up on the news and up on the media. They're not so much into alternative, very specific kinds of outlets. Now, this doesn't mean that it's impossible for them to know what's really going on, or that they're always just going to a default of mass consumption. It's just that they enjoy things being pooled together that are all in one place. Say, for example, in the case of Amazon, they would much rather get something there rather than having to find just the right organic local produce that's only delivered on Tuesdays. That's a second color thing. They are much more into having things available that could be sent to their house in just a couple days, that's reliable in that sense. They would really enjoy that kind of thing. You could say the right fixed fifth color is a bit different because there's less of a searching quality in that enjoyment of having things that are pooled together in that way. Because right fixing tones are always concerning other people more. What's coming from other people, what other people might pull out of you. So there's more of an interest there. With a left fixed fifth color, it's more personal in a certain sense. You could say the gratification that they experience with their own cognition with a left fixed fifth color is more personal, even though it's still an upper color, meaning non-specific. So they love just getting into things, information, whatever, and taking it apart and being able to put it back together and kind of being information junkies in a certain sense. There's, like I said, there's no such thing as information overload for a fifth color. So if you have a left fixed fifth color, that's like really getting into things. There's no such thing as too much. You can just keep taking it on, taking it on. Whereas the 2 is sort of waiting by the river of life and waiting for things that are specific. The 5 can sort of indulge in anything and everything that's on the river. Pick it up, take it apart, examine it, and still just keep going within that mode without it ever becoming a burden. But we'll talk more about that when we get into transference between the 5 and the 2. If the 5 is getting too specific, then it might be in transference. If the 2 is getting too broad with its options, then it might be in transference. When we get to the fifth color environment, it's called valleys. And it has a left fixing of narrow and the right fixing of wide. Now, upper colors are really about no place in particular. Lower colors are about places in particular. Upper colors are no place in particular. It has to do with a wider environment, more of a landscape, less of a hardscape of civilization. When you look at valleys, valleys are areas where civilization has always been built. Wherever there's been a river valley, rivers were the highways of the world, and wherever there's a valley, there's always a town, there's always a city, and this is where different cultural elements can come in and where trade can happen. There's a lot going on. In the same way, there's a lot going on with the fifth color determination. But it's not about things in particular. It's about moving in between things, kind of like the fifth line in a sense. What is the gift of the fifth line? It can see into the projection field. The projection field is 100% impersonal. It's not just you and it's not just them. The projection field is not something that should be taken personally, even though it can feel very personal for somebody who has a lot of fifth lines because they constantly feel projections coming in. They might feel paranoid. That's one of the natures of the fifth line. But it's
not personal. There's so much going on within it. But there's also a lot of gifts and abilities about it. There's something that's seductive about it. When you enter into a valleys environment, there can be something very seductive about it because there's so much there that you could get into in terms of information, in terms of cultural elements, in terms of something that's foreign. You could be pleasantly surprised by something if you're in a river valley and there's trade going on. You know, what's coming off of this ship? You know, something is coming off of this ship. Different cultural elements may be coming off of this ship from a land 1,000 miles away. But these days, that kind of thing is happening so much with the advancement of technology and transportation, with planes, trains, and automobiles and all that, that global trade is now like we can have anything we want almost within a matter of days just by having the internet. But in terms of environment, think of Silicon Valley. That is really a fifth color kind of environment. It has to do with technology. It has to do with a lot of information, advancement, delivering things. People have a lot of businesses where they want to deliver cutting edge stuff. That's kind of like a fifth color environment. But there are other environments that could be that way as well. You know, as long as it's a valley, as long as it's a place where things have pooled together in one way or another. The internet is one place where that happens, but there's also physical places where that happens as well. Different cities. If you have a left fixed fifth color environment, narrow, that means your focus within that environment, that valley's environment, is going to be more active. You're going to have a role within that environment to be able to move between all of that information and to feed off of it. The body enjoys feeding off of whatever environment it is naturally attuned to. Like for me, I have a right fixed fourth color environment. My body feeds off of that kind of frequency, you could say. Just being passive within whatever environment I find myself in. If I can be, in a way, above it, no matter what environment I'm in, I'm not really 100% in it. I can appreciate it, but I'm in a sense above it. I'm always above it, no matter where I'm at. With the left fixed fifth color environment, it's about being active within all that activity, like really active within it. Having a certain role to play, being at that cutting edge, being able to deliver something to someone or to people. Now this is kind of like, again, what it has in common with the second color, how the 2 and the 5 have certain things in common. There are a lot of options available with the 2 in the same way there are options available with the 5. But with the 5, it has to do with delivering them, working them, being at the cutting edge of things. If it's right fixed and it's wide, again, that gets rid of the agenda. It's more passive. So you can be within that environment of heightened activity. You could be sensitive to information within that environment, but you don't necessarily have a big agenda within it. You don't need to get in it in a focused way and have a role to play. Now you can take this literally and say you either need to live in an actual narrow valley or an actual wide valley. I don't look at things so literally like that, even though you can experiment with it and see how you feel with it. So with a right fixing fifth color environment, being able to be passive within all that activity of the 5, with all the options that are available. It's not any one thing in particular. You're not buzzing around like a busy bee necessarily among it, but just being among it and feeling that hum, the hum of the fifth color, could be very soothing for your body. In a way, your body feeds off of it. Now, when we get to the 6 is really fascinating to me because it's at the very top of the colors. It has the keynote of light, and it's either direct, left fixed, or indirect, right fixed. The 6th color is really fascinating in what it has in common with the 3, meaning stimulating. There's a lot of stimulation going on with the 6. But what's different is that it's about no thing in particular. It's about the environmental how, not the what. I've noticed that 6 color people have an ability to absorb a lot of information, but who don't have an agenda with that information, even if it's left fixed. Even if it's left fixed, it can be an interesting thing to where they can pour their interest into whatever subject they're looking at, because they can be terribly interested in so many things. 6-color people can. But they don't necessarily have a big agenda with it. It could be true, it could be false. What they're interested in is their interest, period. That doesn't mean that truth doesn't exist for a 6-color. It doesn't mean that truth doesn't matter. It just means that what really stimulates them is the next foundation, the possibility, because that's the nature of the 6. It's kind of like when you look at the 6th line. They're visionaries. They're always looking to the next foundation. There's got to be something else. There's got to be something more than this. So what the 6 does, in a sense, is it stimulates possibility. And it is stimulated by possibility of transitioning from one place to another place. It's always looking ahead. With a left fixed 6-color called direct, you could think of that as their attention and the light of their own consciousness being poured into different things at different times. If something comes in front of them, they can pour their attention into that. And then something else can come in front of them and they can pour their attention into that. But what they don't do is get overly obsessed with the inner workings of those things. They don't necessarily need to know how all the bits and pieces work together, because they're agendaless in that sense. It's not like the 3. The 3 is in the middle of everything and is very concerned with finding lies, finding truth, all of that, decoding the matrix. The 6 is just fascinated by the matrix, whether it's true or false. It just looks at it like, wow, look at all this stuff. We can look at this, and then we can look at that. It doesn't mean that truth doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that truth does not exist for a 6-color. It absolutely does. They can experience trial and error. They could get burned by things, and when they do find truth, they can hold that up as being a very important discovery. But what's important for a 6-color to understand is that it's not necessarily for them about just that all by itself. For them, it's the experiential. It's all about seeing and experiencing what's going on and then taking it to the next level and stimulating the possibility of what could be happening next. Where is the next foundation coming from? What does that next foundation look like? That's kind of like the way the 6th line operates. They are very excited about the next possible foundation. They're ready, in a way, to parachute off of the top of the hexagram and land into a new foundation. That's what they find so stimulating. And this stimulation is what the 3 and the 6 have in common. It's just that the 3 is stimulated by things being transformed from one state into another state. We mix all these things together, right? With the 2nd-color, we have all these elements, then we mix them together, and there's a lot of transformation going on. There's a lot of manipulation of things going on with the 3. And it's very stimulating in that way. But with the 6, it's not about transforming things from one state into another state. It's about transitioning from one place into another place. And as long as the 6-color person remains cognizant of this and remains aware of this, that it's not about the transformation of things necessarily. It's about being stimulated by possibility about where things are going. And this is why they can become so fascinated in different subjects without necessarily having to take on those individual subjects as their single solitary life purpose or the one thing that means more than anything right now. They can pour their awareness into it and be very fascinated with it and even find it to be terribly important, but they'll just as easily go on to the next thing. The way I see it, or the way I described it once, is kind of like the eye of Sauron, especially with the left fixed 6-color. It's kind of like the eye of Sauron in the Lord of the Rings movies. Not in an evil way, not in a bad way. It just means that their vision and their cognition is like, it can really focus on something and pour its attention into something like, and then it can just as easily move that attention over to something else, like, and pour its attention into that and be really, really fascinated with it. But it's on a tower. It's not on the ground. It's not even concerned with the inner workings of every single little thing it's looking at, even though its vision can peer flesh and cloud and earth, like what Soberman said. Their vision can really look into things without being karmically tied to it. And that's the fascinating thing. That's why they can be so stimulated with things. They want to stimulate possibility about where this is going. Where is this really going? Where can we take this? Can we take it to another level? And you can see this kind of sprightly attitude with 6-color individuals. They have a kind of elevated cognition. That doesn't mean better than other people. It just means it's elevated energetically in a different kind of way of being highly stimulated with possibility. When you're looking at a right fixed 6-color, it's called indirect. Now this has to do again with attention. People with 6-color determinations are told that they should either eat in direct light or indirect light, meaning they should only eat at day or night. I'm not so strict like that. I think if somebody, if a left fixed 6-color does eat during the day or does eat during night, I don't think it's like necessarily so bad for them. It's something to experiment with again. If somebody has a right fixed 6-color, I don't think it's necessarily wrong if they eat something during the day, especially if they have some kind of illness and it's important for them to get a lot of calories. But if they are in a really good place and they can handle periodic fasting, then maybe, they can experiment with eating more at night than during the day. I've talked to right fixed 6-color people who actually already eat like that. They only eat at night. And I'll tell them this, and they're like, I already do that. I'm like that anyway. I'm like, well, that's interesting. As long as you don't have any health conditions and you're not suffering, go for it, But it's not just about what you eat. It's not just about how you eat, right? It's about cognition, lifestyle, how they prefer to take in information. With left fixing 6-color, they prefer to take it in directly, looking right at it and absorbing it through their senses that way with their pure awareness and being really excited and stimulated and interested in what they're looking at in the moment. And then moving on to another thing. With a right fixed 6-color, it's really fascinating because it's called indirect. This is really the epitome of no thing in particular. They can receive information from any angle. And again, since there's a right fixed tone underneath it, other people might pull that information out of them depending on who's around them. I uploaded a video with one lady who had a right fixed 6-color determination. And she had like 12 6 lines throughout her whole body graph. She had a 6-color determination and a 6-color environment. So she has all these 6s. And I was stimulated just by talking to her to really take things to the next level. She stimulated that in me because of all these 6s. Like, where could this go? There's so much possibility here. It's like stimulating possibility. So I decided to upload her talk, and then I started doing a lot more talks that were looking at different combinations of these because I was stimulated by her presence or her aura, you could say. She told me in an email that she has a lot of people come visit her on her property because she has an Airbnb. And she says that people always tell her that she's like a wise woman and that people love being around her and that she has a way of stimulating something in people that is really powerful for them. But she says, I don't really see that in myself. I'm not trying to be that way. And I tried to explain to her that it has to do with all these 6s. And the fact that you have a right fixed 6th-color determination, meaning it's more communal. Other people will be pulling this out of you. Meaning what? Other people will be pulling out of you a heightened sense of what's possible in their own life. Even if you don't feel like you're doing it on purpose, they will feel like they're being stimulated in a way just by being around you, that you stimulate possibility within them, and that you're delivering it to them through helping them focus on in one way or another way, even just energetically. One thing I've told people with right fixed 6 colors is the importance of stargazing. Now, Anthony William has talked about this, that it could be an important practice for anyone to go out stargazing at night, that it can actually heal your soul. It doesn't matter who you are, what color you have, what fixing, it doesn't matter. Stargazing can be really important. But for a right fixed 6 color, it could be something that's truly magical for them, because when you think about it, it's about no thing in particular. With the left fixed 6 color, it's about the sun itself, our light source for this planet, that lights everything up and helps us look at things, right? But with the right fixed 6 color, it's dark, but you get to see all the stars, all the different sources of light, all the different pinpoints of light that are within this galaxy. Now that's very stimulating for a right fixed 6 color to be in that kind of environment. And that's also how information can come to them, through like the corners of their mind where light isn't necessarily directly hitting. Now, with a right fixed 6 color, it doesn't mean you can't directly look at subjects. It doesn't mean you can't like read a newspaper or get interested in something that's right in front of you. It just means that your cognition is really sensitive around the edges, how that information might be coming in and what it might be used for later. Because you got to think about it. The right fixed 6 color is literally right on the edge. It's the most on the edge color. There's a new foundation coming right after it, which would be a left fixed 1st color, right? So having a right fixed 6 color, it's really all about being right on the edge and being stimulated, being very stimulated by being right on the edge. So taking things directly in, you almost don't even do that. You can appreciate information that's coming in directly, but your cognition prefers to take things in on the periphery, things that are coming from the darker corners where there isn't much direct light, and a lot can be gleaned from that. The girl I talked to who had this right fixed 6 color, before she even knew what that was, before she even knew about it, she is a very spiritual person, and she told me that her guides told her to take in light indirectly. To take in the light indirectly. And what she would do is she would put crystals in a glass of water and put them outside in the starlight and the moonlight. And then she would drink it after a couple days of doing this. And this was her way of taking in light indirectly. And that was really fascinating. When she told me that story, she's like, yeah, and then when I found out I have indirect light with my cognition, with my determination, it made total sense. So there's a lot of validations with this, when you see how people think, how people behave. I've seen people with a right fixed 6 color, and there is something about them. There absolutely is. In the same way, there's something about people with a left fixed 6 color. There are certain things about people with a right fixed 2nd color and how they hold on to things, how their body might be holding on to things, and how they need to learn to open up. And there are things you can notice about right fixed 3rd color people as opposed to left fixed 3rd color people. And there's 12 different combinations of these. So you could say there are 12 different modes of being, even though within that there's even more differentiation, because of course we don't have just left and right. We have 1st, 2nd, and 3rd tones fixing it to the left, and 4th, 5th, and 6th tones fixing it to the right. And those create subtle differences as well. But in order to explore those, we would have to have a private session. But when we look at the 6 color environment called shores, this is again about being right on the edge of something. Right on the edge without going totally into it. It's the same thing with the 6 color determination. Being right on the edge without going totally into something, and how that can be a really stimulating thing. The 6 color environment called shores is either left, natural, or right, artificial. If it's left, you have more of an active role within that environment of being right on the edge of something. A lot of people with this environment, they enjoy being either on the edge of a lake, on the edge of an ocean, like literally being on an island, things like that. If it's right fixed, artificial, you could say that they're on the edge of a city, or they're on the edge of a town. They're not in the middle of all the action. That's a 3 thing. And if it is right, they shouldn't necessarily have a big agenda within that shore's environment. It's about being passive. It's about being more fluid within the environment. If it's left fixed, then you could say they definitely are more active within that shore's environment. And their body can feed off of that sort of place that is no place. It's sort of like, it's not one place or another place. It's a border between the two places, whether you're talking about an ocean or being on the edge of a city. You know, if somebody has a 6-color environment, it's like if you really like a place and you really like a city or you really like an environment, it's about getting right on the edge of it, but not going totally into it. You don't need to be in the middle of it. You can be stimulated enough just by being on the edge of it. You can go in and then you can get out. You can go in and then you can get out. If you're in the middle of it, that can lead to transference, actually. Now, this is where I want to start getting into transference. And I'm going to start with the 1 and the 4, then the 2 and the 5, and the 3 and the 6, so that we can understand how transference operates between all these different colors. Now we're going to discuss transference and how to actually get out of it if you are in it. A lot of people might be in different kinds of transference, but I'll be exploring the different levels of transference a person might be in when we move along here. We're going to go back to the 1, the first color, and its relationship with the 4. So we'll be talking about the 1 and the 4 first, then the 2 and the 5, then the 3 and the 6. Now, between the 1 and the 4, it's interesting. Remember when I was talking about the 4th color, that its natural state is actually to be in some kind of transference, because it can experience all the different ways, as long as it's either calm or stimulated. And it needs to maintain that fixing. That's all it needs to be aware of. If it's left, it needs to keep things calm, then it can sample everything perfectly fine without any issue. If it's right fixed, it's more stimulated, and as long as it's stimulated, it can sample all the different ways, as long as it's stimulated by its environment or other people. But when we look at the 1 has the possibility of being in transference into the 4. Now, this is a real possibility for somebody with a first color. They may, through a kind of harmonic alignment, feel drawn to 4th color stuff because there is a harmony there. And this is the nature of transference. We are drawn to what seems to be in harmony with us. There seems to be a likeness between the 1 and the 4, just as there is a likeness between the 2 and the 5 and the 3 and the 6. But we need to understand the nature of appreciation within our native color. With the 1, it's about appetite and having deep appreciation for things unto themselves, and being able to take that appreciation all the way to a satisfactory level and then moving on to the next thing, either consecutively if it's left fixed or more alternating if it's right fixed. But the appetite for the 1 can be quite voracious. It can be quite large. But as long as the appreciation is there for things in particular, and as long as the appreciation is there for things unto themselves, like experimenting with mono meals and stuff like that. It doesn't mean you can't have guacamole or taco salad. But experimenting with mono meals, experimenting with fruits and vegetables just on their own, and really getting into that. This can help you deeply appreciate your native color, because if you are being pulled into 4th color stuff, what is that 4th color stuff? Feeling like you can experiment with any way of being. Literally, any cognitive way of being, because the appetite of the first color is so intense sometimes that it feels like it could devour anything. It can take on anything. Not just things in particular, but even no thing in particular. It could take this appetite into completely different lifestyles. It could try to be like a 4. it can in a way take that security and that certainty it enjoys feeling with things in particular and try to turn it into a mobile home that's very mobile. That's not to say that a first color person can't experiment a little bit, but if they're experimenting too much with all the different lifestyles and moving in between all kinds of different things, they're definitely in transference. And the way transference works is that a lot of times you just don't even know that you're in it. You don't know that you're in it when you're deeply in it. And if somebody tells you that you're deeply in it, chances are you might try to come up with excuses because it's so close to you. Like I said, it's like a fish in water. When you ask a fish what it's like in water, they're just going to say, "What water? I don't see any water. What do you mean water?" Transference can sort of be like that because it's so close to our cognition, and there seems to be a harmony with the other color. So if a first color person is in deep transference into the fourth color, one thing they may be experiencing is traveling all over the place to try and find just the right thing. And they might be even trying different lifestyles and stuff. Now, I'm not saying there is something wrong with traveling or that there is something wrong with experimenting somewhat. Say, somebody with a first color might have an open G center, and they might be able to identify with different identities, different groups of people. That's possible if somebody has an open G center. It's more possible for them. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being social. There's nothing wrong with traveling. But it could be a kind of compensation if they're doing it too much in order to try and fulfill that first color appetite that is trying to experiment and, in a way, get out of itself. This has to do with a lack of appreciation. If there is a lack of appreciation with your native color, the transference of the other color is really going to be covering you up like a blanket. I've seen it over and over. It's happened with me as well. But this isn't a judgmental thing, because I know it's pretty much a reality for a lot of people, but there are ways of getting out of it. And that is through simple appreciation of your color. Even just being aware of what I'm telling you can help you progressively get out of it through stages of just being aware. With the first color, it's that you don't need to be anywhere or living another life through somebody else's eyes or through another mode of being. Your cognition is perfect as it is. And it has to do with that intense focus. Since it's a lower color, it's about things in particular. And since it's the foundation of the lower colors, it's really about appreciation of things in particular unto themselves. This doesn't mean you can't travel around or try to find yourself or go on like a self-discovery type of journey. But if you can deeply appreciate what's in front of you, both in terms of food and lifestyle, keeping it simple. The 1 and the 2 are inherently simple. They are. I'll talk about how the 2 is simple, but the 1 is simple as well. That doesn't mean dumb, and it doesn't mean uninteresting or dull or anything like that. It just means simple. And there is great power in simplicity. And if you miss that power, you'll be sucked into fourth color transference. In a way, the first color being pulled in the fourth color transference means it's being spread too much, almost like what Bilbo said in Lord of the Rings. I feel like I'm butter being scraped over too much bread. But when you bring the power back into the simplicity and the appreciation, it gathers more to itself. And that's right where it is. And you can explore that appetite with so many different things. That appetite can take you on amazing journeys of exploration, actually. It helps you drive deeply into things and deeply appreciate things, deeply appreciate relationships, deeply appreciate subjects that might hit you in a certain way. Remember, the first color is very visceral. It's very physical. Things are felt very deeply within when things are taken into the self. I think the first color has a strong connection to the adrenal glands, Because when you think of the hunter-gatherer, the first color being the hunter and the second color being the gatherer, the hunter is in it for the thrill of the hunt. I knew a guy once who had a first color and a first tone underneath that first color. So being very powerfully left in that way and also lower color, you can tell how he takes one thing all the way and then has to move on to the next thing and taking that all the way. And it's very important to focus on that if you're in any kind of transference. And like I said, some people might not even realize they're in transference. A way to test if you are is to keep appreciating your native color as much as you can by actually practicing it. You know, you don't have to have a mono meal for every single meal, and you don't have to focus on just one thing forever, but experiment with it. Like, really do it over a long period of time. And try avoiding, whenever you can, certain fourth color temptations of trying to live out this kind of lifestyle or that kind of lifestyle, or thinking maybe you could experience things in a third color way or a sixth color way. Because what the 1 and the 4 have in common, in a way, is that appetite. The appetite of the 1 is things unto themselves. But you could say the appetite of the 4 is to move in between all the different ways. There is a kind of foundational quality within both of them. They lay the foundations for lower colors and upper colors. So they're kind of like exemplars. They're the example. They set the example for how lower colors generally are and how upper colors generally are. What happens with transference is that it can pull you out of your body. It pulls you out of the appreciation of your differentiated state. In a way, we kind of want to be pulled out of our body when we're in transference. We don't like the feeling of being in our body. We want to be pulled into something else. It's a kind of escapism, actually, to vicariously live through something else that seems to be in harmony with you. Now, this goes for all kinds of transference, actually, no matter what color it is, except maybe the fourth color. Now, when you look at transference in terms of environment with the first color, caves, they may want to have a kind of perspective that is outside of a secure environment. They may want to escape in order to have a higher perspective, a higher view. That doesn't mean they can't be high-minded or anything like that. You got to be careful with language. It doesn't mean that they're less than. It just means that their native color in terms of their environment is to have a secure place with their things, a place that they can feel very secure in, very safe in. If it's left, then it's more like one way in, one way out. That's the kind of cave that they would like to be in. One way in, one way out. No matter if it's a room, whatever. Even children would be more comfortable in a room like that. But if they have 2 doors, if they have a lot of windows and closets and stuff like that, a child with a left fixed first color environment is not going to feel safe and secure in that room at all. I mean, you want to talk about monsters, their imagination is going to be going crazy with what's in this, what's coming through that, what's in here, what's in that. But if there's just one way in, one way out, and it's in a basement or a den or something like that, that would be even better, because it would make them feel very encapsulated and secure. If someone with the first color environment is in transference, they may be trying to get out of that in order to have perspective above everything and not really be attached to their particular environment. But again, when you tell people about their color, whether it's a determination or environment, they're like, oh, I've been like this my whole life. I already know this. I've been living this already. That's very true. A lot of people already do know this deep down. They already live like this. They're already well aware of this. This is just like a useful mirror. But the thing is that transference robs you of appreciation of what you already have. And I hate to say it, but lack of appreciation for a person, for your own existence, is like an epidemic on the planet right now. And there's a lot of escapism. There's a lot of vicariously living through other things and trying to get out of oneself, to get out of one's body. And I was very deeply in this as well. And I know it's difficult that when somebody tries to tell you that, you take it personally because you should know, right? It's possible for a native color to be deeply rooted in its native ways with how it is, but to also have a kind of transference that is pulling it somewhat out of itself, either a lot or a little. And it's very important to be aware of how that is. Is it a lot for you? Is it a little? Sometimes the only way to test it or to know is to experiment over an extended period of time. It could even be years. But through simple awareness of your color, of your native color, and how transference works for you, simple awareness of this can start the ball rolling in the right direction. And you will start eventually seeing how the transference works in your life and what you can do to get out of it. If you have a first color environment and you're in fourth color transference, it's important to really appreciate your cave, your sacred space, your secure space, to really appreciate your things, the things that you have a strong connection to, and feeling secure in that kind of environment. Even if you live with other people and you feel kind of rattled by having too many people's things mixed together, like if you share a room with someone like that, just realize that you have a first color environment, meaning it would be a good idea for you to either find your own place, get your own room. It would be a great idea if that room was either on the first floor or in the basement. I don't recommend musty, moldy basements like nasty basements. If it's a nice basement with a good room in it, really try making that your den, your area. And it'll help awaken the appreciation within you. Now, a first color environment person can travel and they can go around the world and get hotel rooms and they can fly and stuff like that. But as long as they're aware that they have a first color environment, they might even really appreciate it more if they visit an area or go to a new place and be like, this place feels really first color to me. I feel secure in this place. I really like it. I like this architecture. I like how this room feels. That kind of thing. Because you can see it in all kinds of different things. It's not just your room or your office, so to speak. When we move to the 2 and the 5, this form of transference can be pretty intense because the 2 can be transferred into the 5 and the 5 can be transferred into the 2. I've done videos about this, a couple videos, but I'm going to flesh it out here a little bit more. The 2 is about having options, just a more varied amount of options. And as long as it has those options, and as long as it can create like a perfect menu for itself that is adhered to quite rigidly, it's happy. It enjoys developing taste over time, whether with food or with subjects, rolling the same things over in its head, over and over and over. And this deep familiarity can actually lead to amazing expansion of awareness. Remember that the 2 has to do with space. It's the first encounter of space, really, when you're looking at the 1 through 6, whether it's with tone or color or line. When you get to the 2, it's like that first encounter of wide open space, of a kind of grace. And the 2 wants to have the space to appreciate the different things that are available in a gathering kind of way. I want to gather this to myself. I really like it. That means I'm going to go over it and over it. And through that familiarity, amazing things can be discovered, actually. You could say that the first color is finding patterns for survival. It's all about survival with the first color. The second color is finding patterns for the hell of it. Meaning, it's not necessarily for any kind of deep visceral survival of the physical. It's for fun in a way. It's for pleasure. It's for developing taste. And this is where you can get things like astrology and archetypal stories and things like that aren't really 100% necessary for survival. We don't need it to survive. We can survive just fine without it, but it's enriching. It develops a taste for things. And the 2 really adheres to those when it finds them, and it wants to develop them even further. Even when you look at the level of base, the 2 has a lot to do with evolution, the evolution of our minds, and moving things forward progressively over time, and how important that is. And it can only happen with space. But the 2 can get pulled into 5th color stuff. Remember, the 2 and the 5 have to do with finding patterns, being able to recognize patterns. But the 5 does it in a very, very different way than the 2. The 2 is personal about it. It's all about finding patterns for personal development that, yes, they can then be shared with others, but it's really about developing taste for oneself with things in particular. With the 5, it's a totally different thing. When you look at the 5, like with how I was saying, it's how it's connected to the internet, and or like with the 5th color environment, how it's like elements of civilization pouring into river valley cities and towns. There is so much there that's connected to things like the internet and all this stuff. There are so many options available. Not just the options that could make a 2nd color happy in having space around him or her, but the 5th color becomes really seductive. I mean, the 5 is seductive anyway. When you look at the 5th line in human design, the nature of it is that it's seductive. People know there's something in there. What's going on with this 5th line? Could they do something for me? Could it fulfill me in some way? Can it bridge something for me? Can it be my savior? Can it be my avatar? What's going on with this 5th line? They look so seductive. Maybe they can be my lover. Maybe they can be this. Maybe they can be that. With transference between the 2 and the 5, it's kind of the same thing. If a 2nd color is being pulled into 5th color transference, they're being seduced into it because of all the options that are available. And they're being pulled into it, and they can actually start to drown in it. I've seen it over and over again. When a 2nd color person is deep in 5th color transference, they are information junkies. Really. Information junkies. Now, information overload isn't possible for a 5th color person because they can expertly take it all apart and practically assimilate it in their mind or deliver it to other people in a way that's useful. That's not to say a 2nd color person can't do that, but it needs to be very specific for a 2nd color person. When they are pulled into 5th color transference, they are lost in the world of just stuff, either online with information. It's also possible that they may be listening to too much music. This was the case with me. I mean, I was a musician. I was what people call a muso. I was really, really into music. I still am. I mean, I recommend watching the video I did where I talk about all this, understanding 2nd color transference into the 5th color and vice versa. That one's for free on my YouTube channel. The nature of the 5 is about sound. But it's not just sound, it's also information, right? Those sounds and those frequencies don't always have to be audible, but they can be. And the 2, with its unique ability to find patterns and to expand itself when it finds just the right pattern that it really likes, no matter what it's with, if it really likes a certain pattern, it wants to expand it somehow. And it can only do that through familiarity. But with the 5, it's like there's not enough time to become familiar with any one thing in particular because there's too much going on. You go from one thing to the next thing to the next thing to the next thing. It's like a really busy bee that doesn't have time to appreciate what it's getting into. With the 2, it's about cutting a really deep groove and getting in that groove and staying in that groove. And when a 2nd color stays in a groove, it gains momentum. And when it gains momentum, amazing things can be discovered that lead to further expansion, further space. And that deep appreciation that got you there. And a person with a 2nd color could experience that. And still also have a 5th color transference stuff going on like I did. I was one of these people who was absolutely addicted to the internet and listened to way too much music all the time. All the time. From dawn to dusk. Now, you got to be careful because I'm not saying music is bad. I'm not saying you should stop listening to music if you have a 2nd color. I'm saying you need to experiment because this world is filled with distractions, especially when you're looking at this 2-5 transference. It's got to be some of the most distracting stuff out there when you're looking at a second color being pulled into fifth color stuff. Whether it's being addicted to news articles, whether it's being addicted to YouTube, news, alternative media, whatever it is, any kind of media, addicted to music, addicted to documentaries, just information overload. Now for me, having a left fixed second color, which is open, you could say I've experimented with a lot in terms of that stuff, right? I'm open to a lot of things, but I've learned how to really close. Remember that the left fixed second color is open in order to learn how to be closed because they're so open. The right fixed second color is closed in order to learn how to be open to just the right things that are really good for it. It's really necessary because a lot of right fixed second color people are hurting with digestion and holding on to things too much. Even their own intestines are holding on to things too much. They need to start letting go in more ways than one. Psychologically, spiritually, attitudinally, they need to start letting go as much as they can. It doesn't mean they can't hang on to things still. It just means that they need to learn how to start letting go. And it could be different between the left and the right, like how they may be being pulled into fifth color stuff if they are in that kind of transference. But what worked for me was shamanic healing, getting actually really experienced shamans to work with me to help me heal and to help me heal my soul, you could say. And the more that happened, I realized, I'm not saying you have to go the shamanic route like I did, because I was doing a lot of things. I changed my diet. I was getting really healthy. That's one way that you might be able to do it as well, especially with lower colors, because it's about appreciation, like deep appreciation. I've also talked to upper color people, fifth color people, fourth color people who've changed their diet, and when they changed their diet, it changed their lives, right? So don't let anybody tell you that just because you have an upper color, that food doesn't matter. That is nonsense. Do not believe that. It's just that environment is really important with you. But for me, what really started shifting me was shamanic sessions for about a year that were really helping me. And I'd say after about 6 months of intensive shamanic healing and dealing with energies, forces, entities, healing just so many things on that level, becoming very sensitive, that's when I started realizing I need to turn off the internet, like really turn it off, period. And I need to stop listening to music, like really stop listening to it, period. And that's when amazing things started to happen. I started to experience appreciation on a level I never experienced in my life. Never. It was sort of like being on drugs, like really high frequencies of love and appreciation were pouring into me, and I didn't know where it was coming from. Sometimes it would take me to my knees. I would just be in love with everything. I would be gushing with love for the universe, even for simple things like the fact that there's space, which is really a second color kind of thing. Like the fact that we have space in rooms, that there's doorways, that we have these walls. I would walk up to a wall and touch it, and I'm like, this is amazing. This is beautiful. This is incredible. It's like a whole new dimension opened up in my head. A whole new dimension of appreciation that I had no idea I was covering up with way too much information, way too much fifth color stuff. I was drowning it. And it's taken me actually a few years to be able to be secure enough in my appreciation and my stability within second color appreciation to be able to, go into fifth color stuff every once in a while. I can check the internet. For a while there, I didn't check it at all. I would just maybe check my email once a day or a couple times a day. I definitely wasn't surfing around, going and reading this, watching that video, none of that. I didn't do any of that for a year. A whole year, just zip, none of that. And I also stopped listening to music 100%. And that's when all these spiritual experiences started happening that have to do with very deep appreciation. It would take me into bliss sometimes, and sometimes it would last for hours. And there's a lot of integration that can take place with this stuff. Like I said, you try to tell somebody they're in transference, they're going to think you're crazy because it's so close to them. But what I'm telling you now is what's possible when you start to appreciate, like deeply appreciate, your native cognition. When we look at it the other way around with a 5 being pulled in the second color transference, that's quite possible because the 5 is like the 2. It's really good at finding patterns, but it's doing it in a different way. It's more about the environment. It's not very specific, but the 5 can be tricked into thinking it needs to be specific with a pattern. They might actually really want to have the kind of security somebody like me experiences with a second color determination. They might want to keep it really rigid in order to experience some kind of security within their environment when it's not really about that for them. They can be secure in different ways, but they need to be okay with having their native cognition. If a 5th color individual is being pulled into second color transference, they may be, Ra said that you'll see these people trying to live off of nothing but seaweed and hog's ears. Like keeping it really, really simple with weird stuff. That's what second color people do. Second color people do that. I've been eating potatoes with a special green sauce I make on it like almost every day or every other day for over a year. It's just something I love. And some people might look at that and be like, well, that's just monotonous. But it's a pattern that's good for me and that is great for my cognition because it's like I'm experiencing it for the first time every time I do it. And it's really healthy. I love it. I love my lifestyle. That's why the lower colors lay the foundation. They kind of set the example. You know, you want to be healthy. Raw food can really take you there. Unprocessed whole foods can really take you there. And that's kind of the example that the first and second colors can set. But if the 5th color is being pulled in the second color stuff, they are trying to be too rigid. When they walk into the kitchen in order to enjoy food, it might feel like a really tense situation. And they might start to worry about it. Am I doing this right? Am I doing that right? Is this good for me? Is that good for me? If you're in touch with the right kind of foundation, with lower colors, with the right kind of healing, what's possible with healing foods, what supplements do what, like when you get into Anthony Williams material, that's really, really good. But at the same time, it shouldn't be something that is a constant worry. With a 5th color person in second color transference, it may turn into that. They may constantly worry if they're doing it right, when in reality, what they should be doing is just making sure their environment feels good for them. It's all about the environment. Say if they're eating and they have a left fixed 5th color, which is high, just make sure you have things going on, either reading a book or having some talk radio going on, a YouTube channel you like, maybe you're watching a movie, and just having the information coming in. Just keep the information coming in. But if you're not doing any of that and you're focusing too much on the food itself, the properties of it, am I doing this right? I just want to be secure and make sure I'm doing it right and trying to be rigid, that's absolutely second color transference. You're being pulled into second color stuff. Because there are a lot of options, you could say, in that second color world of health and healing foods and I just want to feel better. How do I feel better? Oh, maybe I'll just eat nothing but avocados for the next week. That's no good. That's no good. What you would want to do is maybe get familiar with some of Anthony Williams' material, some of the things that he talks about with diet. But when it comes to determination, this can help you fine-tune your diet. It can help you fine-tune everything. If you have a 5th color determination, for example, you can be doing everything right, but you also want to make sure you're just focusing on the environment. If it's a right fixed 5th color environment, just make sure you have some nice ambience going on with low information coming in. A low frequency of information, whether it's music or whatever. With music, it could be like having really nice ambient music in the kitchen. You do not want your eating experience in the kitchen to be a tense, stressful experience. That is the last thing you want as a 5th color. You just want to be able to take it as it comes. Of course you want to be healthy. Of course you want to do the right things for yourself. But it shouldn't be something that's all consuming. Like if I don't do this right, I'm going to get sick. If I don't do this right, I'm going to be if I don't do this right. Yeah, there's an element of truth in that, but don't drive yourself crazy over it. Make sure the environment is very good for you. If it's right fixed 5th color, have some nice ambient music going on. Maybe even light some candles. Make it a nice environment so that your cognition can feed off of the ambience. The beauty of it. Maybe go out to eat. If it's a left fixed fifth color, maybe go out to eat. Maybe enjoy a nice restaurant. If it's a right fixed fifth color, maybe eat outside where you can hear birds and the other kinds of ambience going on, animals, the wind, the trees, stuff like that. And no matter what the ambience is. And the more you can appreciate that, the more you can appreciate the wider environment and how your cognition actually feeds off of that, rather than just the things in particular, it can eventually pull you out of second color transference, if you're in second color transference, which is very possible. If you don't think you're in second color transference, you very well may be, you're just not aware of it. And like I said, the best way to become aware of it is to appreciate your color, your native color, as much as you can over time, over a long period of time. Just being aware of it, understanding how transference works, and you'll be able to notice things over time. Over time, you'll absolutely be able to notice things. And when we look at the environment side, between the 2 and the 5, it's the same kind of thing, basically. The 2 is markets and the 5 is valleys. If a markets person is in transference into the valleys, they're lost in how many options are really available. It's not simple anymore. They've made it way too complicated. There's too many things going on. It's not just markets in terms of like, this is available and, oh, that's available, I like this. If it's a left-fixing second color environment, which is internal, they may be offering something and have an active role within the marketplace of ideas or whatever merchants, whatever they're offering. If they're right-fixed, it's just about being more mellow in that kind of environment, not having a big agenda with it, but enjoying being around it. But if you're pulled into fifth color environment, then it's way too confusing because there are way too many options available. There's way too much stuff going on. You might be like in some kind of Silicon Valley jet-setter environment trying to make your mark in the world, and it can be too much because there's kind of like a similarity, right? There's a similarity between the 2 and the 5. It's just that they're on different frequencies, you could say. It's not that one is better than the other at all. But if the second color environment is being pulled into fifth color stuff, it can just diminish the appreciation of what you have really going for you in that more specific sense. You could say in a more local, simple way. That doesn't mean you can't travel. Like I was saying with the first color and stuff. It doesn't mean you can't travel and experience the wider world. It just means you have to appreciate where you naturally feel harmonically aligned or attuned to. If a fifth color environment is pulled into a second color environment, it's just the other way around. Wanting things to be too simple, you feel like you may be doing it wrong and that you need to deeply anchor yourself somewhere, when in reality, the 5 is, in a way, really mobile in terms of environment. There's so much going on, and it's a nice environment. But a person, if they're in transference, they might feel like, oh, I need to get out of this environment. I need to keep it real simple. I just want to have a few options available because that's my nature, but I don't want too many options. And if they're doing that too much, they may be getting pulled into second color transference for sure. So it's about appreciation. Appreciate what you have and what you're working with. And understanding the left and the right fixing. If it's a left fixed fifth color, it's narrow, it's active within that fifth color environment. If it's right, it's wide, meaning more passive within that fifth color environment. And experiment with that. And you can take it literally if you want sometimes. You can experiment by being in a narrow valley or a wide valley, being more focused and sharp or more peripheral and soft. See, left and right. You can experiment with that. And the more you experiment with it and are aware of it, you'll become aware if you are ever getting pulled into transference for sure. Now we're going to move into the 3 and the 6. The 3, like I've said, is about transforming things from one state into another state. It's taking all the options of the 2, all those possible options of the 2, and is really mixing them together now and getting different outcomes. There's all kinds of discovery. Oh, when you mix this and you mix this, you get that. What an amazing thing. This isn't just with food, but with information, knowledge, all kinds of things like that. It's how we build our civilization. And you could say that we're at the pinnacle of that. We're at the tippy tip when it comes to the three. Like when you look at tone, outer vision, we are really outer vision right now. But it's paradoxically helping us drive further inward at the same time. The outside is the inside, and the inside is the outside. We're going to see a kind of Mobius strip with all of this, with how intense our three reality is, whether we're looking at third tone, third color, or third line. But with all the intensity of the third color determination or the third color environment, they might feel like they want to escape it. Like I said, there is a kind of escapism inherent in transference. They might want to go straight into a sixth color reality, where they're just kind of unplugged, where they're not involved in everything so deeply. They would like to just get away from it and not have to be so concerned with it because everything is so right in their face. With the third color, it is like things stimulating your awareness. When something comes into your awareness, it is very stimulating. And you can get into it and attack it, but a part of you might be like, I wish I could just live on the moon and not have to look at this, right? You don't want to have to decode the matrix forever, but what if that's your gift? What if that's what you love to do? I've talked to a lot of third color people, and they love that. They love information. They love finding truth. They love finding what's false as well. They love measuring things and seeing what holds up to scrutiny and what doesn't, either for themselves or for others. It's a really fascinating thing for them, and they enjoy it. But they might also want a vacation from it, because their hands are always so dirty being right in the middle of everything. That's the nature of the three. It is right in the middle of everything. And it might just want to rise above it and get out of it. And the way it might do that is taking little, miniature vacations in its own mind. If a third color is in transference, that's pretty much what it would feel like. A part of their brain is trying to go on permanent vacation, away from having to look at stuff or being stimulated by things. Now again, I have to say that it's not bad for a third color person to go on vacation or unplug from stuff, but think about it. When you think of vacations, what always comes to your mind? Beaches, right? Shores, being on the edge of something, getting out from being inside the middle, getting out from being in the middle, getting out from the city, all that kind of thing. So if a third color person is wanting to go on vacation, it might actually be a good idea for them to maybe go on a vacation to a city that they really like and actually absorb things like museums, sites, sacred sites, historical monuments, things like that. Really check it out. Go to the museum. Go to that historical monument. Go to this place and learn and remain stimulated about where you're at, right? You want to keep that stimulation going. If you're a third color person and you go on vacation to a beach and you just want to lay on the beach and bake in the sun, that's transference. That's transference. I'm not saying it's wrong for you to, enjoy the beach, go to the beach. There's nothing wrong with that. But there can be a real desire for that if you're in transference. Remember that the three transforms things from one state to another state, and it's stimulated by that. It's also stimulated by the nature of civilization. Things that have been built up, how far they have gone. There's a scientific nature to the three, with its trial and error, discovery, like the laboratories with the third color environment, which is also called kitchens. There is a scientific nature to it. And you want to keep them stimulated in that way, with information and discovery. Like, wow, I didn't know that. Wow, I didn't know that. It's okay for them to unplug a little bit, but they might also, if they're in transference, want to unplug permanently and get out of things permanently. But they also balance the two. Say, for example, when I was talking about the 2 and the 5, I was definitely already living second color stuff. I was really a second color person, even though I was at the same time deep in fifth color transference. So it just had to do with me getting more and more into deep appreciation of that second color and getting further and further away from fifth color stuff because it's so seductive. If you're a third color person, try experimenting with that. If you feel like you really just want to live on the moon, try just getting further and further away from that. Progressively, you don't need to do it all at once. Just try appreciating your native cognition as much as you can, of being right in the middle of the action, seeing all this information, the building of the matrix, what's true and what's false about it, what's going on with our civilization, all these elements that are being mixed together, all these cultural elements, all these actual elements with physical reality. How are these things being mixed together? Where are we going scientifically? How are things being built? How are things progressing in that way? That's a really powerful thing for you. There's nothing wrong with taking a vacation every once in a while, but try to get away from the idea of feeling like you need to take a permanent vacation or get away from this reality that you have with your cognition. That is so important. The world needs very aware third color people. We need people like you to help us decode the matrix. In a way, you built it. All the threes built it. And now they're the ones who are left trying to figure it out. Like, okay, we built this massive thing, and it's full of deceptions, but there's also truth within it, and we need to find out what is worthy of passing into the upper color reality and what is not worthy of passing into an upper color reality. You know, because you want to have pure experience. That's what upper colors are about. That's what right tones are about, upper colors, or if you look at the rightness of the body graph itself with the solar plexus or with abstract circuitry, it's about experience. But you want people to have holistic, healthy experiences, right? You don't want them to have to deal with a lot of chaos coming out of leftness. That is either full of false information, false beliefs, bad science, people being lied to, like what Anthony William talks about. You could say the work that Anthony William, the medical medium, does with his books and his radio shows is a really hardcore third color thing. What is true and what is false, and giving people the groundwork for health. Because there's so much misinformation out there that's actually hurting people. So the lower colors lay the foundation. The lower colors lay the foundation and are supposed to set the example so that upper colors don't have to worry about it. Upper colors shouldn't have to worry about what they're getting into with lower color stuff. And that's where the issues rise. The perfect example of this is when we look at a 6 color getting pulled into third color transference. Now, what does that look like? Remember that I was saying the 6 color is about being stimulated, just like the third color, but it's about being stimulated by possibilities, going from one place to another place, and being stimulated by the possibilities of that, not transforming things from one state into another state, but transitioning from one place to another place. And they can be deeply interested in things in the same way, in the same kind of way a third color might. But the issue that can take place for somebody who has a 6 color determination or a 6 color environment is being seduced into being in the middle of things, in the middle of a cultural happening, in the middle of a city, in the middle of like where all the action is. If they have a job where they're just going through client after client, or customer after customer, that's kind of like a third color thing, because there's so much to be stimulated by in that way of one thing after the next, when really a 6 color should be more freed up. Their cognition is really naturally freed up to look at whatever they want to look at and pour their interest into it, pour their awareness into it, and share that elevated excitement with other people, and stimulating the possibility of what's next. What could possibly come after this? Wow, this is amazing. Let's see where this can possibly go. That's really one of the most beautiful things about the 6 color. But if they are being pulled into third color transference, they are very distracted by certain cultural elements. When it comes to food, they could be addicted to junk food that you might find in an urban environment or a city. Things like McDonald's, Kentucky Fried Chicken, stuff like that. They know they should probably stay away from it, but they can't help it because they need to indulge. They need to stimulate themselves because it's what's available. I've seen this with a lot of 6 color people. They can't stop. Anthony William is coming out with a new book called Liver Rescue. That should be out in October of this year, 2018. a lot of people suffer from insatiable appetites, and it's because they have clogged livers and they're not getting enough calories from good sources like fruit, for example. And the fact that they're not getting these good calories and the liver is full of fat and lots of other things that are not good for it, it means that when people do eat, they're not being satiated, they're not being satisfied. Now, this is something that happens for a lot of people, no matter what color they have, But this is where understanding your color can be really an amazing thing, and it can help you turn your life around, really. If you have a 6 color and you're being distracted by 3rd color stuff, you might be in an urban environment. You might be living in the middle of a city and driving to work every day. And every time you drive to work, you see all these things that are trying to grab your attention. Just like what takes place with the 3rd color. Things that grab your attention. Remember, like I said, throwing the dog a tennis ball? How when they see it, they have to go after it. The moment they see it, they have to go after it because it's something that's available. It's something that's available within our culture, within the mixing of things, transforming things from one state into another state. We have all these possible combinations, and somebody with a 6 color who's really pulled into that reality just wants to eat all of it. All of it. They want to try this, then they want to try that, then they want to try this, then they want to try that. But the best place for a 6 color person to be who's being pulled into that is to be on the edge, to not be in the middle of things. It would be good for them to live on an island or on a beach or on the edge of things. Like, say for example, I know somebody with a 6 color determination and a 6 color environment. It is really important for them to be on the edge of things without being in the middle because it's so distracting for them. As soon as they see a place, they just have to go right toward it. But when they're not in that kind of environment, it's not a worry. It's not a bother. They're eating healthy. They're doing great. They're interested in what they're interested in. They're getting work done. They feel good, because they're not in that hectic urban environment where everything is trying to grab their attention. But the second they're back in that urban environment, boom, 3rd color transference is pulling on them really hard. Look at me, try this. Remember that the 3 and the 6 are stimulating. They have stimulation in common. But the way the 3 is stimulated is different than the way the 6 is stimulated. The 6 should be stimulated by possibilities, stimulating possibilities, seeing how things can possibly be with the next foundation, where things are going from one place into another place. But when it's in this 3rd color stuff, another thing that can happen is getting overly concerned with certain kinds of arguments. That doesn't mean that truth doesn't exist. It just means that if they're getting overly concerned with it, they may be getting pulled into 3rd color transference. In the same way, a 3rd color person might just wish they could disconnect from everything and be pulled into 6 color transference. But I have to keep emphasizing this. Truth does exist with a capital T. Of course, there are many ways of healing. I've seen it myself. There are people who have healed chronic illness with certain modalities through meditation and prayer and visualization, and they also had to clean up their diet at the same time. Because if you do use quantum healing techniques, and they do exist, shamanism is a good example, you can use that to take you to a certain level, and it could actually heal you quite a bit. But you need to be able to maintain it, because if you don't maintain it with the foods you eat in this very physical world we live in, if you don't maintain with the gifts we've been given, with the vitamins and the nutrients and the phytochemicals and the minerals and everything else that is in these precious foods, these fruits and vegetables, and these wild foods, if you don't utilize that gift from God, you may be setting yourself up for some real hurt later. Especially if you're being tricked, you could say, by that 3rd color reality that's trying to have all these bells and whistles in your face, like, come here, we have this whole building set up just for you where we're transforming chicken from one state into another state, and it's amazing, it's so crispy, and it's made just for you. A 6 color person needs to stay as far away from that as possible. here's the thing. If you appreciate your color and you've been in your color appreciation for a long time, you may be able to go into an urban environment and have some. Just have some. You don't have to cut yourself off forever. Life is meant to be enjoyed, right? But there is the danger of drowning in it if you're in transference. And it can actually mess up your life, really. And this can happen in a few different ways. I've seen people with 6 colors get like really, they can feel it. It's almost like a gravitational pull. I talked to one person who had a 6 color, and I was telling them how important it is to be on the edges of civilization without being right in it. They had a 6 color determination and a 6 color environment. And they told me one time they were in Europe and they were driving into another country. And when I think it was Poland. And when they got to Poland, they drove into a city, and with all the cultural stuff that was going on, all the lights, all the different people walking around, all the faces, all the action, she was enthralled by it, and she just wanted to jump out of the car and just be one of these people immediately. Just get out and just start living there as if she had been there the whole time. And she felt this incredible desire to do that for the whole duration they were driving through this urban environment, this city. And when they finally got to the other side of it, to the edge of it, it went away. And I told her, that is a very interesting story you told me. It's important for you to be on that edge because it's seductive when you're in the middle of it. When you're in the middle of it, you just want to get lost. Just get lost. And this is basically how transference works, you know. The first color just wants to get lost in 4th color stuff. The second color just wants to get lost in 5th color stuff, and vice versa. The 3rd color wants to get lost in 6th color stuff. The 6th color wants to get lost in 3rd color stuff. But the way you get away from that is by appreciating your color as much as you can. That way you can sample every once in a while. I can sample some 5th color stuff. I can actually listen to music again a little bit. A little bit. I like a little bit of ambient stuff here, a little bit of ambient stuff there, but I'm definitely not going listening to heavy metal every day or whatever it might be, because I have a deep appreciation of my cognition, how it works. I enjoy having that second color space. It's really important for me to maintain that appreciation as much as I can. Same thing with the other colors. You know, if you're a 6th color being pulled into 3rd color transference, it is imperative for you to appreciate that 6th color as much as you can. It might even require moving. You know, if you say, for example, if you have a 6th color determination and a 6th color environment, and you live in a city, and you feel like you're off, and things don't feel right, and you need to get out, and you might be experiencing food addictions and stuff like that, you might need to get out of that situation and get to some place like an island or a beach, or maybe getting on the edge of a city rather than being in the middle of it. If you can get a house or an apartment that is outside of the city to where you don't have things in your face every day when you're going to work trying to grab your attention. Now, it might require just a little bit of augmentation of your life. You don't need to do anything too drastic, but some people out there really are into doing drastic things if it'll make them feel better. If it will at all make them feel better, they're all for it, and they'll do anything. So, yeah, if you're a 6th color person and you're getting pulled into 3rd color stuff, really get out of all the action. Get out of all the action and just enjoy being on the edge and enjoy being stimulated by possibilities with the subjects that you're interested in. Enjoy experimenting with either if it's a left fixed 6th color, experiment with eating in the daytime in direct light. If you have a right fixed 6th color, experiment eating at nighttime. That doesn't mean you can't eat anything during the day, but experiment eating at night. Experiment cognizing at night. See how that feels differently. Like some people feel, like there's that artist, her name is Akiana Krameric. She goes to bed every night at like 8 or 9, and she gets up at 2 or 3 a.m. And that's the most creative time for her, when she gets up at like 2 or 3 a.m. And I wonder if she has a right fixed 6th color. That is the most creative at night. It's very calm, it's indirect, all kinds of inspiration might be coming in from different directions, right? because that's what it's like when you have a right fixed tone underneath the color. Things can come in 360 degrees. It's not super focused, even though they can focus, you know. I know a lot of people with a right cognition who are artists, who are mathematicians, who are scientists, you know. So you might look at them and be like, no, you shouldn't do that. That's left-oriented stuff. You shouldn't do that. But that's false. You know, just because somebody has a right cognition, just because somebody has a right fixing tone with their determination, doesn't mean they shouldn't be allowed to do stereotypically left stuff, like science or math. They might even be more gifted at it because their brain is handling a lot more kinds of information. And their brain can actually handle more equations, more kinds of information, as long as they're around people. It's important for people with a right cognition, because other people can stimulate it and pull the information out of them in just the right way if they're working with people and they're in that kind of environment. And it's the same on the environment side between the 6 and the 3. Like if you have a third color environment, kitchens, which is really about being in the middle of the action again, but you want to unplug from it, you might be trying to live next to the water all the time, just to get away from being in the middle of everything, just to give yourself a permanent vacation. But that's sort of getting into 6 color transference again. But it's also the other way around, but I already talked a lot about that. So again, it's about just being aware and being in appreciation of your native color and experimenting with this over a long period of time. You don't need to do anything drastic. I mean, I heard a story once. Somebody found out that they had a right fixed third color environment that was dry. So what they did is they dropped everything, left where they were living, and went to go live in the desert with a bunch of homeless people. And they were being congratulated, like, yay, you're living in your environment. But he didn't have any opportunities. You know, it's like, it's all about trial and error, of course. You know, especially like with a 3. You want to do something drastic, it's all about trying to balance extremes with a 3. And discovery can come out of that. So, you know, it's not so surprising that a third color environment person did that. But what I'm saying is that it doesn't need to be that extreme. You can experiment with it, even no matter where you're living. I mean, Ross said that you can find these environments. If you're looking at your design nodes with your environments, you can find these environments anywhere. Anywhere where there's civilization, you could find an environment like this. And it's good to just be aware of it. How is it affecting your life? How much time are you spending in your native environment? And if you're not spending that much time in your native environment, try going there. If you can move to a place that is aligned with your native environment, that would be great. And I found that combining astrocartography with the environment in human design can be an amazing thing. It can really help you like find a great place, like the perfect place for you to live. If you happen to have a very auspicious alignment in a certain area on the planet with astrocartography, like astrological relocation. Say you find a really auspicious area that seems really good for you. Maybe it puts Jupiter on your ascendant or something like that. Say you find a place like that. There's so many combinations and possibilities. But say you find a place like that and it's also in alignment with your environment in human design. It's also in alignment with your design nodes. It's a perfect environment. Say it's like something like markets, or it's something like shores. Going to that place will be very healing, very rejuvenating for you. You may even discover yourself more deeply in terms of appreciation. It's all about appreciation. And appreciation can go so deep. It's like they talk about in the Letters from 500 books that I always mention. Appreciation can go so deep, it can go to levels that we aren't even aware of yet, really. I'm talking about appreciation on a level that is so powerful that it's like giving constant thanks to the universe, to God, to higher power, whatever you want to call it. Having a heart that is literally overflowing with gratitude that you get to have this experience, that you get to have a differentiated awareness, that you get to experience this world and have your own dreams, your own fantasies, your own wishes, your own personal experience that will never happen again, ever. You get to have this differentiated experience with all of its fine-tuned nuances. Yeah, there are 12 different combinations with color. But within that, there's so many variations with the body graph, with what's defined and what's undefined, exactly what tone is underneath your color. Is it a first, second, and third tone? Or is it a fourth, fifth, and sixth tone? That creates a whole lot more variation with what's possible. There will never be another you. So it's important and imperative to my mind to appreciate what you have as much as you can. Now, some people do this through meditation, opening up their heart, but I found that, while that's really important, understanding this stuff can help you align with it even more. Because this world is meant to be explored and relished and loved. If you had an area that you liked more than another area, wouldn't you want to go there? Animals do it all the time. Animals always do that. If an area feels really good to you, I've read that cattle are like this. They find areas that they just really like for some reason energetically, and they stay there. And if they don't like it, they'll move. It's the same thing with humans, but we can fine-tune that with things like astrocartography and understanding your environment and human design and understanding your determination, your native cognition, so that you can appreciate your life as much as you can without getting pulled into transference. And it can be a slow process. I know it was slow for me, even though it seemed to happen really fast when I started getting out of transference. It was like, whoa, it was like a slingshot, but it was slow going getting there. It was like a slow process of finally understanding just how much in transference I was, then having all these powerful experiences of deep appreciation and open-heartedness and love and even bliss, I would say, pouring into me from the universe, because I was no longer distracting my brain. I was no longer jamming up my frequency with all this other stuff, all these other distractions. So it's very much possible, and it's a process that takes place over time. But I've given a lot of ideas that you can experiment with. Thank you guys for watching and listening, and I'll see you next time.